I call to order the August 3rd, 2020 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Ms. Bolton?
Yes, ma'am. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
She must not hear you.
Mrs. Bates? Mrs. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Bowers?
Present.
Mr. Lindy?
Here.
Mr. Messer?
Present.
Mr. Morosky? President Jones?
Here. Thank you. Members of the public who wish to be heard during this segment for hearing of the public must request to speak during the first 10 minutes after the start of this meeting by clicking on the icon on your device. Please do so now. Hearing of the public will directly follow the superintendent's presentation. Individuals who raise their hands after the first 10 minutes of the meeting will not be recognized to speak during this segment. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting, July 8th, 2020, the business meeting, July 13th, 2020, the special meeting, July 13th, 2020, special public meeting, July 15th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Okay, Mr. Morosky, as chair of the policy committee, please present the July 10th, 2020 policy committee meeting report.
Thank you, President Jones. As Mr. Messer and Ms. Bowers tell you, we had an excellent meeting of the policy committee. I began the meeting with sort of a level set for all in attendance regarding how a new policy becomes policy. We had a number of attendees due to the anti-racism policy and, of course, COVID-related items. So I simply just kind of began explaining that when a new policy is introduced, it takes a long, long time for it to become real. Those who are around during the equity policy can speak to that. That's all to say the anti-racism policy isn't just dreamt up in general counsel's office with assistant general counsel and then it gets passed. So there was a nice discussion between the board members, Mr. Messer, Ms. Bowers, and myself, Ms. Stephanie Scott, and Mr. Dan Hoying. I would like to take this time, like I did in that meeting, to give Ms. Stephanie Scott, our assistant general counsel, a shout out. This was the first new policy she worked on, and in my opinion, she did an awesome job. So the proposed new policy was included in your packets, so hopefully you had a chance to read it. The purpose of the policy is to eliminate all forms of racism from the district in conjunction with related board policies. Ms. Scott reported that legal reviewed various anti-racism policies already in place in the country and reviewed information from the Southern Poverty and Law Center that focuses on rights for various groups. He also informed us the language is aligned to anti-various discriminatory aspects contained in the Constitution of the United States. Ms. Scott reported language will be added to the policy on how the district will show itself accountable, as committee member Bowers inquired about language in the policy that talks about ensuring consistency in student discipline and the various types of demographic data that would be collected and what would be done upon data collection. At the end, committee member Messer expressed a desire to put together a task force of community members and experts in this area, as well as including students, advised that this be in the form of a working group, which we all agreed. I then advised Ms. Scott and or the legal department or Office of Communications to follow up on Mr. Messer's request. Of note is this policy is on our website at present, and it has the ability for community members to leave feedback directly on our website. And so that is there if you want to read it tonight and provide feedback please do. Another new policy that was proposed is policy 5321, which is a face mask policy. Governor DeWine announced on July 2nd, 2020, schools implement a face covering policy, or he recommended it, I should say. General Counsel Hoying reported he used DeWine's guidance along with assistance from the Ohio Department of Education and the City of Cincinnati's own policy to create a draft, which you had previous to the meeting. I assume at the end of these minutes, if folks want to, the reason on board matters, the face mask policy wasn't there or the anti-racism policy wasn't there, as I figured we could talk about it after this. So I'll just keep going and then we're finished. We can't have Q&A. These are two pretty big new policies, I realize. Graduation policies, Mr. Leach, Director of Testing, updated for policy revision that you will see later in the agenda, that our graduation requirement policy be amended to state students entering grade 9 on or after July 1st, so it's the class of 23 and beyond, July 1st, 2019, sorry. A diploma shall be awarded to students meeting the curriculum requirements, a reading and math competency score is defined by the Ohio Department of Ed, or demonstrate the alternative options to competency and earn at least 2 diploma seals, with at least one of the diploma seals being a state-defined seal. Just for the public's edification, I think it's important to note that we offered the additional district-assigned seals in accordance with adopted administrative guidelines. Those seals are a community service seal, a fine in performing arts seal, and a student engagement seal. So we'll ask that amendment to be approved later. Another new policy, 5466, identification of students at risk of not qualifying for a high school diploma. Mr. Leach reported the policy is required by the state of Ohio in order for districts to develop graduation plans. Committee member Bowers expressed concern, rightfully so, we thought, about the confidentiality of mental health services information being in student success plans or school records. So this identification of students at risk for not qualifying, just put a pin in that real quick. Essentially what this would do is create an individual plan for each of these students. The state is asking us to do this. If we can identify someone's not graduating, Ms. Bolton and I know we used to talk about IEPs for everybody. While this is not an IEP per se, it is very much an individualized plan. But Ms. Bowers brought up the point, well, a lot of these things are confidential in nature. So Mr. Leach reported that was important, and he will ensure the information is kept confidential. Later in this meeting, we'll be asking for approval of that policy. And just a couple more, I promise. Policy 5113 was the inter-district open enrollment that had come up at another board meeting prior to this July policy committee meeting. Mr. Hoying reported the board advised the policy committee to discuss this policy and how the district will handle inter-district open enrollment during the pandemic. Mr. Hoying informed the group that vacancies for open enrollment will be limited due to efforts in social distancing and preservation of space. No action was taken to rescind the policy or really affect it. The action that ended the conversation was committee member Messer recommending the topic be discussed by the full board during board matters at a regular business meeting. The next piece we already did, which was suspending a few policies, which we did at our last meeting: field trips, school visitors, use of district facilities, an alternative to expulsion and suspension. We voted to approve that, as I'm sure folks remember. Lastly, we had a hearing of the public where 9 community members participated, largely providing opinions on the anti-racism policy, wearing of masks, engaging the public about anti-racism, etc. I present the minutes as written.
Okay, thank you. Do board members have questions or comments? Ms. Bolton?
I think if we have issues about or questions about the mask or about the anti-racism, is that part of board matters or?
Well, I think we discussed it could happen now, probably makes the most sense. And also, I had a question for you and Carolyn. We're done about the equity and what y'all did.
Cool.
Yeah.
I just have an issue about the draft that we saw of the initial mask policy. Looking at it, it seemed to emphasize everything inside rather than outside. facilities. So if that is too narrowly defined when kids are on field trips or what have you, and for other events as well as sports activities. And then I didn't know if it addressed spectators for sports or open houses. You know, I think entering the buildings, I think that's covered. Virtually everybody's got to have a mask unless there's a medical reason they can't. But I was very interested in knowing if that should be expanded for those issues that I've just mentioned.
That's really good feedback. And I don't know, Mr. Hoying, if you can just take that into account. We look, okay, cool. So we'll take that into account. And then we have a policy committee meeting on Friday, and updated mask and anti-racism policies on the agenda. So that's good feedback to have for that. One of the things I had asked too was whether or not we should call out in here, Ms. Bolton, on letter F on the front, if there's a functional or practical reason. Curious if we should have a discussion about it if a student is at his or her desk, just in class, if they need to leave it on. And I think we decided ultimately that we would do that unless they were eating or something of that nature or couldn't have one. So, okay.
Are there other questions about the mask policy, first of all? Okay, and then you're looking for feedback to the anti-racism policy?
Yeah, the anti-racism policy is pretty lengthy and pretty good. I've read it a dozen times or more. And so it is in here. It is beefy, and I'm curious if folks would like to have a full-on board matters discussion about it. It is long, and I don't know if we are prepared to have a robust discussion tonight. I'm more than happy to. I'm also happy to after we get more community feedback to talk about it in board matters.
Yes.
Okay, and then my question, President Jones and Ms. Bolton, if you don't mind, is so this process, and Mr. Messer brought this up in our policy committee meeting, and this process that we've sort of done where we had it created, we had it presented, we have it in the minutes, we have a way for the community to offer direct feedback. I'm just curious if it's following similarly to the massive equity policy that was passed, or if there's any advice for us for the equity policy before us three got here, and Ms. Bates too could add to this, if this is following that same sort of process, or if there's anything we should know so that we make sure we get it right and garner the most feedback.
Well, I guess my recollection, I was just coming onto the board when the policy was being worked through, and a lot of the work of developing the policy happened in committee. However, it did, and Ms. Bolton can probably help me with this, but it did raise to a level of full board conversation. I mean, it's just that important that we do. So your suggestion to have it as a full board conversation makes sense to me, especially after it gets tweaked. It's pretty meaty, as you said, and you're trying to get some additional input into it. So I do think I would suggest bringing it to full board in a board matters discussion as well at the appropriate time. I also, just my comments to add to that is that on just looking at it for the first time, I thought it was good. I did have a question about where it crosses over with our equity and education policy. And I think if nothing else, there has to be some cross-reference, because there's similar language in there, and we have to make sure that we're consistent across both policies. So that's one suggestion. And then the other suggestion, and it's not a suggestion, it's a question. There's a lot, and it's a question, not a criticism. Sure. There's a lot of reference here about racism in terms of our kids and system racism. But my opinion about systematic racism is it encompasses top-down, crossways, and all of that. So I would suggest and offer that we might need to widen the definition a little bit. Okay. So we're not just talking about equity in education or diversity of perspective and opinion, but more about rules and practices and performance and all of that
Okay.
as part of a bigger picture.
Thank you.
Other questions, any more feedback?
I would add a couple things. I do think, and I'm surprised that President didn't mention this because she is one of our editors of the equity policy. I do think it needs to be shorter from a standpoint of focus really hard on anti-racism, so there is less. I like the crossover and referencing of equity, but I think that we had made a real strong case to make a standalone policy about anti-racism. I do think, too, we spent a lot of time looking at other school districts' policies regarding equity because other states, even other countries, were leading us in the equity piece. So I think that's part of it. I think it's great that you're getting community involvement. I'd slow it down a while and I'd allow the whole board to have more than one or two discussions about it because it is so crucial. But yeah, we found some of the best stuff from other school districts and found a lot of good stuff, largely because of their native population from Canada. There's tremendous work in anti-racism in Canada, actually better than we do. So that's an area, but it's so important to do this. So great, keep at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you. Thanks to the committee. All righty, Ms. Bates, as Chair of Health and Safety, please present the July 23rd Health and Safety meeting report.
Yes, okay, so can you hear now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, much better.
Good. Okay, I present the Health and Safety Committee meeting minutes as printed for acceptance. They're rather short. We had 3 reports and pretty self-evident, so I present them to the board for acceptance.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bolton, please present July 23rd Finance Committee report.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, it's been a while since we'd met and had a lot of material to go over. We started with a discussion regarding an audit management letter regarding some activities and processes within HR, and that was addressed. A large part of the meeting dealt with not only the treasurer's information regarding our upcoming budget endorsement or ratification or adoption, but also closeout, as well as how we are developing this budget for this particular year that's ahead of us. Another large portion of the meeting dealt with transportation as one of our largest items in our budget because we offer free transportation and it is contracted out and has been for quite some time. There was interest in what are the new contracts regarding all the transportation vendors that we have and how does the COVID piece influence those contracts? Are we paying if we aren't using? What are the challenges that we have if during the agile time or agility effort by the superintendent to keep the schools functioning and going, how do our contracts with the transportation folks differ or change so that it might be under different conditions depending upon what month we may be in. Also, we were addressing a recent Ohio Department of Ed letter that said that we would be responsible for transporting non-CPS students even if our students were not in session. And so Mr. Hoyne kind of addressed that, and that has become an even bigger issue most recently. And I understand the administration is working on that, and it's something we might want to involve the community to help us, how shall I say, react proactively to that demand, which I think is so unfair because at least my recollection is that we're supposed to be able to provide equivalent service, and if we're not providing it, I don't know what the equivalent would be. So that's going to be a big issue. We also heard great news about our Mozart renovations for our new building and preschool building over on the west side in Westwood. And then we have multiple charts for everybody to see and evaluate, as I mentioned, on budget process, the closeout of this year to the next FY21. We are planning on the final presentation and recommendation for this year's budget coming up on September 14th. There was so many dates and so many numbers and so many issues involved with all of this that it will be posted and better understood by the public if they see some of these charts. Appreciate the treasurer's work on all of this. We also asked what lessons learned from COVID, and do any of those lessons learned have or would inform us on changing policies or processes. And indeed, the treasurer's office will be working, and we'll probably be sending some issues to policy, Mr. Morawski. And then the final thing is that treasurer shared with us that we need tonight to pass, if we have a mind to, a resolution of a necessity in order for the treasurer's department and the district to work in an efficient way to make the purchases, deal with the vendors and what have you that we need, particularly a rapid turnaround in order to face the challenges of COVID. So we're going to be presenting that resolution tonight. So I present the minutes as written and hope for endorsement.
Thank you. Do board members have questions and comments about the report? Okay, I need a motion to approve the committee report.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Minutes are approved as presented.
Mrs. Bowers really wants to approve these minutes.
Okay, thank you. All righty, so we're going to move right into the superintendent's presentation. Superintendent Mitchell, please introduce the presentation for tonight.
Yes, as the team has an opportunity to pull up the PowerPoint slides. So tonight's presentation will be an update. If you all recall, for the public, during our last board meeting, the board asked for the administration to review the data on a consistent basis, consistent meaning literally a daily basis, to identify what the plan may need to look like for the upcoming school year. So it's been the board's intent from the very beginning to use the data to guide and inform our work, and also to make sure that whatever we do, we have an agile plan in place so that we can pivot very quickly to make changes if necessary. So tonight's presentation is an update after the board's directive for the administration to come back on today and to bring additional information. Next slide, please. So the leadership team for Cincinnati Public Schools will be presenting, which includes members of specifically my leadership team, as well as principal leaders who are part of our leadership team. And we're also very delighted to have a member of Children's Hospital working with us to present to you this evening as well. So this slide hopefully looks very familiar to you in terms of thinking about what are the three key messages that we want people to really take away from tonight's update. And you'll see things about safety and health and accelerating academic learning and equity. You'll see a lot of data points, and you'll see plans and facilities, and you'll see a lot of different things that deal with the future of CPS. What's most important to remember, though, that this is about people. Everything that is being said tonight, it's about the people. It's about our young people, it's about our community, and it's also about Cincinnati and society. We were all thrust into this pandemic, which none of us asked for and none of us wanted to be a part of. But at the end of the day, we all have to find a productive, positive way forward for our people. And that's what tonight's update is about. Next slide. So considering the board's directive to bring data and information back to the administration, this is a slide from the City of Cincinnati's health dashboard as it relates to COVID-19. And this is a dashboard that I get access to twice a day, at the beginning of the day and then at the end of the day. This is provided by the City of Cincinnati Health Department. And what you can see is that this is showing the number of confirmed cases over a period of time starting in March and ending with July 30th. And as you can see that the curve has been, we've been actually growing in terms of the number of confirmed cases. But then you'll also start to see in July that the data is up and down. So it's very erratic. So you'll see there are some opportunities in which we took a downward turn in terms of the number of confirmed cases, but then you can also see where we've popped back up. And so this is a key piece of data that we're looking at. At this point in time, we cannot say that there is a downward trend as it relates to the confirmed number of cases within the city of Cincinnati. And that is one data point that we're looking for to be able to say we have a downward trend in terms of sustained cases going down. We have not been able to say that at this point. The next slide also represents additional information that we looked at. We looked at the number of cases within a 14-day period. We also looked at the positivity rate. So the positivity rate identifies the percentage of people who actually were tested, what percentage of them actually had a positive confirmed case of COVID-19. So for the city of Cincinnati, our positivity rate at this moment is 7.7. In a conversation with the governor over the weekend, he said that the positivity rate for the state of Ohio is 6. So as you can see, we are higher than the state, and although that it's all relative, what's really important to know is that we really want to be in a range lower than 7. We really want to be around a 5-6 range in order to say that we feel that it is safe for people to be in session face-to-face. And so this is yet another data point that we looked at. A third data point that we considered as we have done our work is to look at the Ohio Public Health Advisory System, which identifies by county whether you're level 1 through 4, and 4 being purple, which is intense intervention in terms of people are only expected to go out of their homes for the bare necessities when you're in a level 4. Currently, as of today, as of my conversation with the health department, we are currently in red. So we are 1 away from being in purple. So as we look at this data, though, we look at the data and taking all the data points into consideration. So for example, let's say that our positivity rate is down. Let's say it's a 5, but we're still in the red. Then we would look at and consider all those data points at the exact same time. So it isn't just one point. There are multiple points that we're looking at as we bring to the board a recommendation. Next slide. So this slide just highlights the fact that our area, Hamilton County, it is still in the red. We have not progressed down to orange or yellow, which is where we really would want to be. So in concert with Children's Hospital as well as the City Health Department, we analyze this data and we look at it to bring to the board a recommendation in terms of whether or not we believe we should open in a face-to-face model or not. Next slide. So let me just remind everyone, here are the data points that we're looking at. We're looking at a downward trend in terms of confirmed cases. So we're looking at about 14 days of the data moving downward to say that the rates are driving down. We also looked at the Ohio Public Health Advisory in terms of the color coding system, and currently at this moment we are in the red. And we look at the positivity rate in terms of those who are tested, how many are actually confirmed to be positive as it relates to COVID, and we are currently at 7.7. The final piece of information that we look at, and so there are 4 indicators. The final piece is we look at the community's capacity to be able to sustain a downward trend. And one of the pieces that we looked at considering this area is we looked at the turnaround time for test results. And so there are so many people who are going to all the different sites that the health department has around the city that the turnaround time can be anywhere, one of those pop-up sites, from 7 days to 14 days. So we took that information into consideration. Now, granted, we are an institution for learning, and that is our top priority, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we want to send our young people back into an environment that's safe. And so I think from the very beginning, this has been the board's aim and charge, is to make sure that our kids are safe. And I don't think at any point we are at odds, the board is at odds with anyone in the community in terms of the safety of our students has been the number one priority. And so considering all of those data points, I am recommending that we temporarily move into a distance learning mode for the first 5 weeks of the school year to give us the chance to look at the trends, look at those 4 data points in terms of our positivity rate, as well as where we are with the color coding system, in addition to how quickly we are able to turn around the test results to identify whether people are confirmed positive or not. So having considered that this is the recommendation of the administration to start off in distance learning, it is very important for us, if the board so chooses to move in this direction, to make sure that we have a very strong start and open to the school year. That will be critical. That will be critical, especially as I consider the conversation that I had with the governor on Saturday, in which there were about 10 or 12 superintendents that he had an opportunity to talk with, and I was lucky enough to be one of those. Prior to getting on the call with the superintendents on Saturday, the governor had an opportunity to talk with his expert who has been working on national modeling in terms of disease, infection, and control. And what his expert said is that in November, December, and January, there's the possibility that schools may not be able to be in a face-to-face mode based upon the spread of COVID-19 during the flu season. So that just reiterates to me how important it is for us to front load as much work as possible, as well as routines for our families and for our young people to be able to have a strong start to the school year as we think about our kids and educating them. It also means that we need to have a very strong orientation for our families and for our students to know exactly what to do if the board so chooses for us to go into this distance learning mode. So as we think about the upcoming school year, the recommendation is that we go ahead and we start on August the 24th, that we review the data in terms of looking at the trend to see if there's a positive downward trend by September the 14th to identify whether or not we are able to open and then return to class by the 28th of September. Again, I will reiterate the fact that we do believe that it's important for our kids to have a strong orientation with their teacher, because if you consider the fact that our elementary students may not know the teacher that they will have for the upcoming school year, because the last 10 weeks of the last school year, they were not in session in a face-to-face setting with their teachers. We believe in order to do this work well and in order for us to be able to return, because we all believe that it is vitally important for our kids to not only be in a face-to-face session with their teachers and all the adults who service them in our schools, but also for them to be with their peers. In order to do this and make that happen, we need the community's help. So this is an all call out to the community to help us get our kids back in school as quickly as possible by social distancing, wearing the mask, washing your hands, and following all the CDC guidelines. So this should really be a citywide campaign to get our kids back in school as quickly as possible. And we cannot do this alone. It will take all of our community members to help us. As we think about the proposal of going to a distance learning mode, this will not be the same as what our kids and our staff members and families experienced last spring. Recognizing and keeping in mind that last spring when we closed and we went to a distance learning mode, we were in crisis mode. No one anticipated being in a pandemic and having to go to remote learning. And since that time, we've been able to do a lot of work with our staff, as well as our curriculum and technology, which you'll hear about, to be able to be in a better position, to be a lot more innovative, and to provide a better solution for our young people as it relates to distance learning. The last thing that I'll say before I turn it over to our Deputy Superintendent, later this week, my leadership team and I will be meeting with the presidents of our unions to be able to discuss this plan if the board so chooses to move forward with the distance learning. You will also hear Sarah Trimble Oliver speak, as well as a representative from Children's Hospital speak, because everything that we have been doing has been in preparation for a face-to-face model for our kids with the distance learning on the opposite days in which they're not in school. So you're going to hear the plan that regardless of whether or not we go with the distance learning or if we go with the blended, we will be ready to open school on the 24th. And now I'd like to turn it over to our Deputy Superintendent, Tiana Amat. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Agility is what we embrace, the teaching and learning team. And as our superintendent said, we are out of crisis. We are ready. We are committed in teaching and learning. Part of being prepared through the last 6 months, we have not only prepared for blended learning, but in-person and distance learning. Remote learning will be different than last spring. Next slide, please. So hopefully this slide looks familiar to you. I shared it the last time. And back to that centerpiece, all children, regardless of circumstances, will receive high-quality, grade-level curriculum, instruction, and technologies. So I wanted to use the same slide to see how that would fit in a distance learning model. We will continue to build relationships, and it is key that everyone who participates in our learning community is proficient in Google Meet. We are going to require, it's mandatory, that we are using Google Meet. We want to see our students. We want to connect with our students. We want to build relationships and be clear about the high expectation that we have. We're going to create a warm environment for our students, and we are going to do that through Google Meet. We also will continue to diagnose learning. MAP, we have used for the last few years, 2 to 3 years. They have been innovative, and now we can administer the MAP remotely. So we will continue to use that assessment tool early on, build on the assets of our students, and close those gaps. So that is something familiar for our students and our teachers. To accelerate learning, it is required that we use district curriculum material. Our learning platform is Schoology. Our teachers have been trained through our Academic Distinguished Teacher Award, and I will show a little clip, a video of what we're doing over the summer months. We have prepared lessons that are already uploaded with the help of University of Cincinnati and Bowling Green. And lastly, we will take the information to give students feedback where they are and learn and adjust. And we are going to be very clear that we are grading the assignments. There will be office hours to get feedback and support for our students. What we have prepared for you is just a sample schedule of what the day may look like in a distance learning model. So here is a sample of an elementary school schedule. So we would have a greeting, morning meeting. That's typical in our schools, elementary schools, for about 15 minutes. If you look there on Mondays, this is a sample, science and social studies. Tuesdays and Thursdays in the morning, math. and ELA, and then Wednesdays and Fridays, a double block of ELA. And you see, we have built-in breaks. I'm so excited about that 9:45 and 10:30 time. As a former teacher, drop everything and read. That's dear. We will do that across the district for that time slot, or exercise and move. That 11:30 to 12:15 time, it's self-directed and small group time. So whether you're working with an ESL teacher, a classroom teacher, a reading specialist, we will continue to have differentiated groups along that time. We have built-in lunch and recess, and continue our specials during the week, and then office hours. Where it said self-directed on Fridays, typically, basically the students will have work that they will complete during that time. But it's very important that we do this and standardize the schedules, because this would allow us to use this time with teachers to do professional development. So we are prepared to do anything from student engagement, working with the content, integrating the content, using the feedback that we get from the map data to do some personalized learning with our students. The next schedule is a sample 10th grade schedule. So here we broken up the bell day. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, you will have bells 1 through 3. Wednesday and Fridays, bells 4 through 6. A Monday, from advisory to meeting with your counselor. And again, those self-directed times, students will be working on assignments that were given by the teachers. We also have office hours on this schedule. And again, this will allow time for our high school teachers to get together for professional development during those self-directed learning times. I also want to take this time to talk about Cincinnati Digital Academy. With this model, the distance learning model, we are asking parents to make a decision by August 7th, because if we are remote, there's an opportunity to stay at your school that you're currently enrolled in. So we're giving the date of August 7th to help with staffing. So if you decide not to attend, and we will have our staff from the Digital Academy to call those families who already enrolled to get confirmation. But we're asking for the August 7th date, because if we start in remote, there's a chance that we will have several parents elect to stay at their school. The remote plan also covers preschool. Preschool would go remote as well. And this last slide, we just want to make sure we have a smart start. And we're going to do this through expectations, clear expectations, being prepared, and having opportunity for practice. So we are preparing for orientations for our staff, family, and students. And these are some items that will be covered. One, we have to introduce ourselves. The teacher and student relationships are going to be new, especially at the elementary level. So to start building those relationships. Teaching and learning is coming up with a staff, a student, and a family handbook, 3 separate handbooks. So everyone is speaking the same language and are clear on the expectation. During the orientation, families will receive a schedule. At the high school, a syllabus. I have here highlighted the attendance and grading, because that's different than last year. It is required that we are moving towards synchronous learning. So you have to log on to your course. There are state guidelines that are very specific that attendance is important, and we are taking attendance. Grading You will get feedback, and the assignments will be graded. Now, we want to close the digital divide, remove all obstacles for our students, so we are going to make sure that they are prepared. From devices to connectivity. During this orientation, if you did not receive your device, you will get your device and access. We will give out the textbooks and consumables that are needed. Every child will receive instructional supply kit to take home. Also, art supplies to take home. If we are blended, we will have those kits in school for individual usage. We are going to ensure that our students are prepared and able to access PowerSchool and Schoology. That will take place. And they will know the office hours. How do I contact my teacher? How do I contact my counselor? How do I contact the school social worker? Here are the times. We are available to assist and help. During the orientation for not only our students, but also our parents, we want to provide an opportunity to practice. So take out your laptops. Let's go to Schoology. Let's log on. Do you know how to upload your assignments? Let's practice uploading assignments. Let's practice checking our grades. Let's practice logging on to Google Meet. So again, we believe with clear expectation, being prepared, and having an opportunity to model, support, and practice with our families and students, we are ready and prepared for a distance learning model. During the last few weeks, we have been putting the lessons on Schoology. So this is just a short clip that we will share with you, and I want to take this opportunity to remind teachers, please give us the feedback. So this is one of the videos from our Distinguished Educator Preparation Program.
Hey everybody, it's Rosemary Jane again, and I've got another quick video about the University of Cincinnati and Bowling Green State University model lessons and templates made for Schoology. But this time I'm going to show you how to access these, pull them into your course, review them, and make them your own. So from Schoology, you can access them one of two ways. I'm going to go into one of my sample courses. You could go into a sandbox or any course that you want. And I'm just going to add materials. And I'm going to import from resources. This is the first way that we can get there. Okay, to access these, they are under the category of group to the far left. You can collapse your group resources if you want because they're actually under school resources in group. You look for the name Cincinnati Public Schools and click on that. Right here is where you can access those course templates or the pre-release model lessons. And we do want you to submit your feedback. So let's say that you teach first grade and you want to pull one of their lessons into your course. I'm going to click here, go to the K3 ELA, Wit and Wisdom. I can pull over all of first grade right there, or I can drill in and pick a specific lesson if I want to. For my purposes, I think it's going to be better if I pull in all of the first grade folder. So I'm going to click that and click import. All right, it checks with me if I want to pull in all the content. I say yes. And then just remember that Schoology drops that content right down to the bottom of your course. If you would prefer to place it inside of a folder you already have, you can do that. You just look for this little green line and click the plus sign. I want to put my folder right in here. Scroll all the way down again to import from resources and follow the same steps. Those were group.
And we have several videos for our teachers to get feedback and show them. But we're also preparing these videos for our students and parents. So we're all on the same page, using the same resources, and having different options to support our families. At this time, Assistant Superintendent Bunting will come up and speak about our students with disabilities.
Good evening. We're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about students with disabilities and our English learners. First of all, it's really important to recognize that students with disabilities will receive services in the remote environment. We talked a little bit about the last time that for some of our learners, this means that they may have materials that they access that don't involve technology. That said, we also know that those services will be delivered based on individual student needs. Some students require assistive technology in order to access the curriculum. That will be made available to them in the remote environment. And we also have some students who require augmentative or alternative communication. Those devices will be sent home with them as well. Next slide, please. I also think it's important to note that our teachers have been working really hard all summer developing a remote learning website and blended learning website to enable and support intervention specialists with a variety of resources. We also know in the blended learning environment that most of our students with disabilities are included in general education classrooms and will participate just as any typical student would in that environment. Students in our blended model are going to come to school 5 days a week so that they can receive the highly individualized instruction that is necessary for their success. That said, IEP teams are the ones who determine those decisions. So there may be some students who will require additional support. Next slide, please. So if we think about our English learners, we also know that they will be in a remote environment as well. Our ESL teachers will be providing services to them, as well as our paras who have been incredible over these last months with providing translation support. Families will work with those school-level teams driven by the ESL teachers to make sure that there's ongoing communication and support within those, for those students. Next slide, please. And when we think about our remote learning, it's catching up, or our blended learning rather, that we recognize that, again, decisions are made based on student need, but we also know that there is a group of students who are newcomers to the United States who may need to receive that in-person support 5 days a week in the blended environment. At this time, Jeremy is going to provide us with updates in technology.
So we have several technology updates tonight that we want to start with where we are with our device distribution. So far, we have completed 22 school device distributions. You can see the list there. And if you look at the banner graph below, while we were building that stack, we had over 9,000 devices that we have successfully deployed. In the few days since then, we've added that number to 11,000 plus devices that we have deployed across all of the listed schools. If you recall, in one of our previous presentations about a month ago, we talked about that we would keep looking at preschool through first grade devices and how we were going to address that once we got closer within the plan to opening school. So as part of that planning, we had to make a change for the second and third grade devices. So previously we had advertised they would be receiving iPads. Beginning today and going forward, second and third graders will not be receiving iPads, they will be receiving laptops. What this allows us to do is shift our iPads inventory to down to where we can manage it and be able to cover all pre-K through first grade students as well. So going forward, all pre-K through first students will also receive a take-home device, which will be an iPad. We'll begin distributing those devices on August 24th, immediately upon the completion of the second through 12th grade devices. Which brings us to our next point, that working with our partners, we were able to accelerate our schedule considerably. If you recall, we originally scheduled out through the first week of September to deploy devices. So working with those and the efficiencies we've gained, we've been able to condense that schedule now to where we will be able to complete our distributions for the 2nd through 12th grade by August 20th in advance of school starting. Also want to point out that we do have, if you notice, all of these dates are Monday through Thursday, which leaves Fridays available for makeup sessions. And since we are tracking every student that picks up a device, we're able to compare that against the enrolled students to determine who has not picked up a device, so that we can target every week those students who have not shown up to get a device to let them know on Fridays that day's reserved for you to have a makeup. And we will continue doing those makeups and those direct communications to those students once school starts to fulfill our commitment to get a device to every student possible. The second update is regarding the Connect Our Students program, or as what often people refer to as the free internet or free Wi-Fi program that we're running. Recall again that we had 5 pilot schools that we initially started with, and we did have significant lessons learned in running that pilot, which is now complete. The first thing was we were very successful with our process. So we were able to validate student addresses, validate student signups, get them ordering the service, and delivering them and installing the service so that they could begin getting access. What we didn't see, unfortunately, was the take-up rates or the number of sign-ups that we were targeting or that we'd like to see. We know approximately 30% of our population needs access, and what we saw was about a 7% turnout. So in going forward, we've made some changes to where we can hopefully market much more directly to those, to the population in need, and changing our plans a little bit. The first thing we've done, if you remember, we were going to, our target was to make the program available to all CPS students at all schools by September 1st. We've been able to accelerate that timeline based on the process success of our pilot, where we will now be offering the program to all CPS students at all schools by the end of this week. Beginning today, we have started robocalling, sending out emails to every student and parent at the first 10 schools, and we'll continue that at approximately 10 schools each day this week so that we can spread out the incoming call base. But by the end of this week, we will be offering free internet to every student at CPS who needs it. A couple of additional changes we've made to make it a little bit easier to sign up for the service is our partner Cincinnati Bell has added a dedicated Spanish language line for taking orders. They have also committed to having a representative at as many of the CPS device distribution sites as possible, so that as opposed to having to call in, as a student or family picks up their device, they can immediately go to the Cincinnati Bell representative on site and sign up for the program. Again, just making it easier. The last thing is we have dedicated, and we're looking at all options to add flyers and marketing signage to every touch point with a student or family that we can possibly do. So that includes our device distributions. We'll have instructions with every one of those, as well as any other touch points the district has with families. So there's been a lot of questions around what the process looks like. So I wanted to take this opportunity to go into a little bit of detail just so we can understand what it really looks like, right? So going forward, there's 2 ways to sign up for the program. Like I said, there will be a Cincinnati Bell representative at most of our school distribution sites, so they can immediately sign up there. For the remaining portion that don't have access to that at one of the distribution sites, they can call to place their order. So what happens after you place your order? They get the information and the address, which is validated nightly with CPS, and then the primary method of connection is for Cincinnati Bell to send you a self-install kit that requires simply plugging it in and calling an activation number, and your service is live. It does not require a family to actually have to schedule an installation time separate from their call. That will serve the majority of our population. There is a smaller portion, unfortunately, based on the infrastructure of the city that will require an installation to come out and do, but it is the much smaller portion. So with that, we're still, as I say, investigating additional options to contact our families to make sure that everyone possible knows that the offer is now available to all CPS students. And with that, I will hand it to Shauna Murphy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good evening, everyone. So you may recall this past spring when Josh Harden did a presentation about return to athletics, return to play, and that has been going really well. There are a few hundred fall sports student athletes who have been participating. However, with this distance learning piece, we are looking at a pause for athletics in terms of moving to the next stage. So you probably are aware August 1st was the day OSHA said contact sports could begin. We at this time are deciding not to move to that level of activity, but we will, however, allow the students to continue in the phase that they are currently in, and that is with the skill training and development going on. Probably a lot of concern about what happens to, in particular, the senior athletes who might be looking at scholarship opportunities. We will still work with our coaches and our athletic directors to ensure that those young people have reels that they'll be able to share, communication that is open with the colleges so that they can play at the collegiate level. Josh Harden and his team have done a lot of professional development with the coaches and the building athletic directors, and that will continue moving forward. All of this will include working with young people and their families to create highlight tapes that colleges would be willing to accept, live streaming opportunities of the young people in their sports as appropriate. Thank you. I think I'm turning this over now to Sarah Trimble Oliver. Yes.
Hi, good evening. When students do return to in-person learning, we will make sure that it is the safest environment possible following the CDC guidelines. Be sure many parts of school will not look the same as it did before COVID. So as an update to district safety plan, the school teams have been developing their school safety plans, and the reviews of those plans are underway and are scheduled to be complete this week. We also have a team that is conducting safety walkthroughs in each and every one of our buildings, 3 of which were completed today. We also will be opening a safety hotline on August 24th, as well as beginning safety huddles. So here to share more about the implementation of the safety plan, we have 2 principals, Jaron Gray from Withrow High School and Jackie Roetter from Academy of World Languages.
Good evening. In speaking to the readiness for our students and how they are to enter the building once they have arrived at school off of a Metro bus, a yellow bus, or through a parent drop-off. We will have temperature checkpoint stations as students arrive to school. They will, temperatures will be taken. Students will then, if they have a approved temperature reading, they will then move through our metal detectors within our building, then engage with a hand sanitation station prior to them going to their breakfast kiosk. Once they've gotten their breakfast from the kiosk, they will directly go to their first bell class or their homeroom and prepare for instruction.
Out of the classroom picture. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here tonight. Thanks for starting this off. Okay. So when some of these pictures are the things that Jaron's already talked about. So when you get to the classroom setting, the office setting, you will see that the offices are set up. The offices are set up with safety shields to help with distancing for families when they're coming into the offices. At this point, there's another temperature check for any visitors entering the building and checks for masks. In this next slide, you see an example of what our classrooms will look like, helping with students and physical distancing. And also, again, you see our students are wearing the masks, teachers wearing the masks, and keeping everybody at safe distances. The next thing that is available in every classroom is our cleaning kits. These are for our teachers to help support the cleaning process throughout the day. These will be replenished as needed, and they contain the cleaner, the hand sanitizer, paper towels to be able to spray and wipe things down, everything that the classroom teacher will need. At the end of the day, our custodial staff will go back through and it will be a deep clean, ensuring that all the high touch areas, but as well as surface areas inside the classroom are cleaned.
In the event a student has been identified with a symptom or high fever, or at some point during the academic day, students will be again isolated. We do have isolation rooms that are set aside for a student or a classroom where a student has been identified. In that process, as you can see, our plant engineer or plant operators will immediately move into a mode where they are addressing the issue. They will sanitize a particular classroom if needed. They will go to our air circulation system within our building, our air handlers, sanitize each of the filters and so forth to alleviate and cut off air circulation so that the issue can be remedied. Again, filters, there is a process that our facilities teams and our plant operators and engineers will go through and handle in that process, as you can see here. So that is an immediate process and protocol that each of our high schools and elementary schools will follow in that process. Thank you.
So you can see from those photographs that the city plan is underway, and mentioned that the team that is safety workers, and we have identified the top criteria that they will be looking for to ensure that our plan is being implemented with fidelity. On the next slide, you will also see a screenshot of the CPS COVID dashboard, where we will be able to track in real time any confirmed or suspected cases at each location, and that is for employees and students. And you can go ahead to the next slide. So we will be prepared with all of these safety measures when our teachers and students return to the buildings. We do know that this will not be perfect 100% from day one. So we are building out a learning system so that we can monitor these safety procedures to see what is working and what needs to be improved. So we're setting up this learning system with guidance from experts from Children's Hospital. And tonight we're very honored to have Melody Siska to share a little bit about this. She is the Children's Hospital Vice President of Quality Improvement and Advanced Analytics.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm really proud of the partnership of Cincinnati Children's and Cincinnati Public Schools and all of our other community partners. It's all of our job to work together to always look out for the best interests of the kids and the families that we serve. And so I had a great pleasure today to walk through some of the schools with the team, and I've just been really impressed with the way that the principals, the staff, and everyone's really been so thoughtful in pulling things together. There's a lot of work to happen. As Sarah said, the only thing we know is whatever you do the first day, it's going to be different on the second day, and it's going to need to be different on the third day and the fourth day. And everything is about learning and surfacing and solving problems. You have to surface them, and you have to get people to be willing to say, here's what I'm worried about. And so one of the things that we've talked about is pulling together these huddles. This is something that we do at Cincinnati Children's every day. We have our daily operations briefing. We hear from everybody, all of the key areas across the hospital. We ask people to say, look back since we last got together. What was something that was unexpected that you didn't plan for? What did you learn? What problems are you solving? And what sorts of things are on your mind? There's always something that's on your mind, and how do we get that to come out so that we can start to understand and have a safe place to solve these problems? The key is about this rapid cycle of improvement. So as things come up, we don't develop a list. We start to fix problems. As soon as we hang up, we have 3 or 4 top things that need to be focused on, and how do you go and solve those right away and identify? And we know a lot of things can be solved at the frontline level. So what sorts of things are the different schools learning and fixing? And then how do we share those across those learnings, and so everybody can get that experience from one another? It's really just, asking those people that are on those calls, getting the voice of the process, getting the voice of all the people. And it's all about making sure that we're keeping a safe environment for the students, for the staff, and for everybody that's involved. And so I'm really proud of the work that's been going on. I was honored, that picture up there, I think is at the end of June, I think it might have been June 29th, Cincinnati Public Schools pulled together a group of people to think about and identify some of those risks. And this is just this continuation of this process. So the huddles will be really important for us to continue to learn, having a couple huddles every day. And thank you again for everything that you're doing to keep our kids safe. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. And at this point, we will turn the presentation back to the superintendent.
So what's next? So this week, we're going to host several town halls for our employees because we want to be able to hear from our employees. We're also going to host a parent town hall, and you can see the date and time for the parent town hall because we want to hear from our parents to identify what we need to do to move forward. I can't imagine a school district tackling this work, this complex work, without the support and partnership of a healthcare institution like Children's Hospital and like the Cincinnati Health Department. So again, a huge thank you to Children's Hospital, to Melody, who has been with us all along the way. The work that they are doing is quite phenomenal in terms of helping us think through all of the healthcare precautions we need to take, as well as the health department. So as Melody said, we had a chance to walk through 4 schools today, and Children's was right there with us, as well as about 5 or 6 people from the health department asking every single question you could possibly think of. And so although I am recommending that we start off with distance learning, we need to be able to be agile and pivot very quickly when the data says that it's safe for us to be able to re-enter in a face-to-face mode. We anticipate that we can still start on the 24th with distance learning. And then again, we would look at September 14th at our data as we look at it every single day, as well as then deciding whether or not there's a recommendation to be able to open the end of September. So again, I just want to highlight the data points that we are looking at on a daily basis, and that is we want to look to see, do we see a downward trend in terms of confirmed cases for the city of Cincinnati? We're going to look at our Ohio Public Health Advisory, that's the color coding yellow, orange, red, and purple. We also will be looking at and measuring the rate of positivity in terms of results, in terms of confirmed cases, in addition to the turnaround time for people to actually get their test results as a result of taking the COVID-19 health assessment. So this is the recommendation of the administration in coordination with our healthcare partners who are at the table working with us side by side. Again, we want to make sure that our kids have a quality education, but we also want to make sure, first and foremost, that they are safe and that we are providing the very best in terms of a service that we can. And if people are worried and kids are sick and they're worried about their health, then it may not be the optimum situation in order to educate our young people. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. At this time, we're going to open the floor up to board members for questions and comments. And Mr. Morosky first, followed by Ms. Bolton.
Thank you, President Jones. Thank you, Superintendent and team. As someone who had great reservations about returning, I want to support this plan, so I appreciate it. It seems very well thought out, and I look forward to supporting it and getting our kids the best education we can in this super challenging time. I wanted to highlight something you said, Superintendent, if I may, before just a couple questions that are pretty brief. You had something on your initial slide about pleading for the community's help. And I just wanted to highlight that because I think we all want our students and our kids back in school. But to do that, people need to wear their mask. They need to stay socially distant from one another, and they need to be safe. And if this pandemic has taught me anything, it's taught me a lot. One of the things is that it appears we are not always hardwired to take care of one another. So maybe this is an issue of sending our kids back that we can rally around. So if you want kids back in school, be safe and wear your mask. And I'll stop. So I appreciate you highlighting that. One question I had was about the food. Are we continuing the food pickups? And what would that look like?
Yes, so if we are in distance learning, then our thought is to have a food hub at every single one of our schools to be able to help our parents and community be able to go to the school that is in their neighborhood and be able to retrieve a week's worth of meals. And so it would be 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches that would cover all the days, so you don't have people having to come up every other day. There is a new component to the federal regulations in terms of distribution of food. So last winter and spring, as well as during the summer months, we have been able to give food out to anyone who would come up to a food hub, and they didn't have to prove whether they were a CPS student or not. And so that waiver does not exist any longer. And so moving forward, according to the federal guidelines, we will only be able to give food to those students who are enrolled within a CPS school.
Thank you. And then just 2 more quick ones. The test mandate for employees, I was curious if that would stand if this virtual plan is adopted.
So I believe there's the opportunity to move the date back in terms of that health assessment, but we do really want to make sure that we get all of our staff members having had that COVID-19 test. Do you have anything that you'd like to add, HR Director? I will say that there are pop-up assessment centers all across Cincinnati, including at Cincinnati Public Schools. That is in partnership with the National Guard and the Health Department. Those pop-up centers or testing areas are not facilitated or run by Cincinnati Public Schools. We just allowed them to be operated on our grounds, but those are not Cincinnati Public Schools testing centers or sites.
Good evening, board members. Yes, just wanted to share, as Superintendent Mitchell shared, we do still have the opportunity and we can push back some dates. We're also looking at adding additional dates, partnering with the city to be able to use our school property, parking lots like we have in the past, and also be able to use the education center to offer more opportunity to our employees.
Cool, appreciate that. I think it's important just to reiterate that any precaution we can take, we're going to take. So I appreciate that very much. And then my last one, I had given an assignment a while ago, I believe, and I know that it happened, and I was super impressed tonight with Jeremy's presentation. It appears that we have done an audit of Schoology and the woes that we're experiencing this spring. We've figured out what some of those hiccups were, and Schoology is ready to go. I want to give an opportunity to you all to reinforce that point.
Yes, so a lot of updates have been made to Schoology, but I will just echo the words of Melody. I'm sure there are things that we're going to encounter, that we didn't plan for,
Oh, sure.
especially if you have all the teachers using Schoology on a regular and consistent basis. And so the big thing for us to be able to do is to learn quickly and then mitigate the situation as fast as possible.
I appreciate that. And I think the important message there is that it was looked at, gaps were found, upgrades were made, and bear with us as we've built out clearly a system that encourages and empowers agility. So thank you. And that's it for me for now.
Ms. Bolton?
Yes, and I'm a couple of times here, I'm going to get in the weeds and a couple of times make some suggestions. First, you said there will be a staff town hall and there is going to be a parent town hall, and you already have scheduled an LSDMC town hall. Appreciate that greatly. When you say we're going to return on the 24th, the teachers, though, are returning on the 17th. Is that correct?
Correct. So my apologies. When I said the 24th, I was speaking to instruction starting or
Sure.
school opening.
Sure.
Opening.
Not a problem. Just from a messaging standpoint, and I know this is, I'm so pleased with what you've said this evening, but from just a messaging standpoint, it would be great if there was some sort of consistent knowledge that first week of return, that the students are processing and in remote and what have you, or distance. It'd be great if we looked at that as an orientation week, rather than teachers individually deciding when to orient, if you will, and then to really emphasize instruction starting on the 31st, so that we're all kind of having that first day of school. Just a thought. Also, what regarding high school schedules, what about electives? Have we built, I may have missed that in the schedule. Have we built in the electives? And also, we're still having College Credit Plus, we're still having AP, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. That schedule, so if there's 6 vowels, they will have their all 6 vowels, but we separated them, so it's 2 days a week. So the electives, the College Credit Plus, AP courses, graduation requirements are all built in their schedule.
And I know one of our great efforts in the last years has been that 7th bell, which helped for electives. It doesn't appear that the 7th bell exists. That's why I'm concerned about electives.
Correct. Remember, Microsoft and the double bell of math has been eliminated.
Okay.
So, but we kept all of the electives, enrichment courses in our student schedule.
Okay, thank you. I'm reassured about that. That's great. Also, I am so pleased about with Mr. Morosky, the technology piece. We couldn't even be discussing distance learning if you had not spent the time and we spent the money to really make it possible to actually have an equitable distance learning plan, and I really appreciate that. I think everybody does. Another thing, will we have, thank you for Assistant Superintendent Bunty calling people newcomers. I like that. I thought that was great. Will the school-based health centers and our nurses be on call at the beginning of this year?
So we do plan to keep our health centers open. The public may or may not know that during the time that our school buildings were closed last winter and spring, we were asked by certain organizations to keep some of those health centers open, and we did. And so it's our plan to be able to have all of them open for the upcoming school year.
And all schools are being provided the needed cleaning supplies, and they'll have those at the site. And have all of our orders kind of gone through for whatever PPE and all that kind of other stuff that we were ordering? Because I know that's becoming another problem again this nationally. Do we feel confident about our purchases?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Sarah Trimble Oliver to be able to speak specifically to the delivery of our products.
Yes, consultant. In a good report tonight, you see one order for
Here, which is. So Sarah, can you try to restate that? And if you aren't able, we aren't able to hear you, maybe if you could type it in the chat and then we can read that out.
Be great.
Can you hear me?
Oh, let's try. Go ahead.
We are able to get the supplies we need, and there is an order for masks in the treasurer's report, for example.
It's sort of.
Okay. I think she said we are able to supply with what they need.
Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And one last thing, on that deadline for the 7th, for people to make that decision about digital, I think if there's any way to build another weekend into that for families so that it's the 10th, this is a big, big thing that people have to talk about. And again, I'm very impressed. I'm continued to be impressed with the fact that we are planning for all alternatives and all occasions. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Bowers? Okay. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Ms. Bowers. We can't hear you. No. No. Okay. So we'll give you a couple minutes. We'll come back. Mr. Messer?
I just wanted to start off. I think I have my mom sitting on my shoulder, and her favorite line, life is 1% what happens and 99% how you respond. And if I know her, she's probably one of the 2,700 people that we've had on tonight. But this is our new normal. And I applaud the administration for the plan that you put before us today, because it gives me a whole lot of confidence as a parent. Forget about my school board role. I'm worried about the education of my children. And I thank you for what you presented. This is our new normal, and I know we're all in this together. And I think these last few weeks have troubled me more than anything else, because the one thing that keeps all of us sitting here in this room that we're in, and the couple thousand plus people dialed in, is because we love Cincinnati Public Schools, we love our children, and we support public education fearlessly and fiercely. But this pandemic has caused us to almost turn on each other versus the real enemy, which is the miserable, embarrassing management of the pandemic at the national level, and a Secretary of Education who's done nothing but make this situation more difficult and an all-out assault on public education. So tonight I want to literally thank the couple of thousand people who have tuned in tonight, and just about every meeting we've had since then, and people who have written to us and called us. We cannot in any way even try to get back to every single person as much as we try. But that has been reassuring also to know just how many people care about our students. I think one thing we can do better is a more regular and ongoing update. Now that we have the scorecard, we've talked about specifically the metrics. We owe it now to our staff and our community to give those updates. And I hope that's something that we can begin on a weekly basis, that we just get updates with Laura like we do with Mr. DeWine and others. This is not going to be easy, but I do know that in my workplace, what has made all the difference is not that everything was handed down by the company. It was that we came together as employees to figure out how we were going to best do this, survive in our workplace in this virtual world. And what I know, and I'll shout out to my children's school, North Avondale Montessori, one of our teachers, Andrea Doyle, so there was a whole group of teachers already working on thinking through, how can we do better? What are some creative ideas that we can do? This is what's going to help us get through it. So I just am excited about the fact that we've got this decision. Whether you wanted it sooner or not, this is when we have it. When the board meeting, it wasn't the superintendent holding anything up. It's just when our meeting fell. And now it's up to us to come together with kids at the center of all of our hearts and minds to get through this pandemic together. So a couple of additional thoughts or questions as it relates to professional development. Of course, I think a lot of that has to be self-driven, and that's really where the innovation is going. I think we have to have our people who are experts and have probably been up at night thinking about this already. That has to be part of it. But is there anything structured that's planned on behalf of the district in that professional development of this virtual world.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask both our Deputy Superintendent and Assistant Superintendent Bunty and Ahmad to come forward to speak about professional development.
The week of the 17th is dedicated to professional development. We have a partnership with our talent development department, teaching and learning, our curriculum department, and starting tomorrow, we're starting with our building leadership. So there is a PD all day virtual tomorrow, so we can get all of what's discussed here in front of our principals and support and help them on the implementation of this plan. They have been working so hard with their safety teams. Now they're going to be meeting with their academic teams. So to be a leader in this, we are meeting with them tomorrow, and then on the 17th, they will help and support with the PD as well. So we have PD from the use of the tools. We have PD around looking at the data, whether it's, I'm specifically talking about the academic, the teaching and learning piece, looking at the MAP data and how to use that data to fill the gaps. And a lot at the elementary school, we are looking at integrating content for science and social studies. So having some cross collaboration with teachers. So not only professional development, but having collaboration time. Our data was clear. We went to our education initiative panel and had discussions in fourth quarter. They want time together to help plan, upload lessons, as well as understanding the content.
So to echo Deputy Amat's summary, we've had thousands of people over the last few months participate in staff development. It has been absolutely amazing, and so kudos to all of those teachers and administrators and other staff who took time to be able to do that. Going forward, for social emotional learning, we have an entire day set aside, August 20th, for every employee who is based in a school to be able to participate in learning more about trauma. McKinsey's actually coming alongside with us, so it's a very exciting partnership to be able to do that. In addition, we have many other trainings going on, sponsored by various departments, both with IT to help support the new Google email system, as well as other platforms. And then Student Services also has a plethora of opportunities for teachers to learn more about remote learning. In addition, Talent Development is sponsoring sessions about how to work in a virtual world. Most of us were not trained in how to manage our time and be able to organize things. And so that has proven to be a very popular course, and I know will continue to be going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as a follow-up to that, and I love that, I think there's the what of the content they're teaching, and then the how, facilitating, and I think that probably is, as our friend from Children's called, we're going to probably learn, and there's going to be a lot of best practice sharing that's going to continue to grow that. So thank you for that. So will the teachers be only able to do the preloaded sessions, lessons that were talked about, or will there be some flexibility there?
The preloaded sessions is our core curriculum, so it is expected that that's where they start. However, those opportunities in the schedule when I had small group instruction, that's some opportunity where you can start to differentiate. We also will have the ability to work with paraprofessionals, and then it's important to have those enrichment courses as well. So you may have an opportunity where you can, while you're in whole group, that you're working here, and then we're learning how to do breakout sessions in Google Meet. So you may start off as a whole group class and then have some flexibility to start to differentiate. But we really want to be clear
we are expecting that all of our teachers use district-adopted curriculum. The other piece that I wanted to share in that schedule, so this is not a drive-through professional development. Professional development will be given throughout the year because as we learn in this new setting and gathering feedback, during the summer school session, we surveyed students. We are going to do the same practice because that's going to help us create and adjust our professional development based on what students are telling us what they need.
Yeah, and then one last question, thank you for that. Just to confirm, it is a actual grade during virtual, not just pass-fail, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then just the last final is the thank you, again, exclamation point on the technology, because if there's one thing that I've heard since we went virtual, is this concern of kids having access to a device and of course then internet connection. And it can't be understated how just powerful that is. It took my company 6 months to do 2,700 devices. You got 18,000. So kudos to Laura and the team who have built external partnerships with Cincinnati Bell, et cetera, to make that a much better situation for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers, we're going to try you again. We can't, I don't know what's going on. Can we get, I'm sorry. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. There is a chat that you can, if you want to enter your chat into the chat and we can read off of that. I see you, Ms. Bates. Give me a minute. Yes. Okay. Ms. Bowers, you may have to do the chat. So we're going to go to Ms. Bates. Go ahead, Ms. Bates.
Okay, are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Good. Okay. So our kids, many of them in the age, going to be at home. They're going to be at day centers. We're trying to work out something with the rec centers, at home care providers. How are we going to ensure that they have internet access? And are we going to do MiFi to extend the internet? And also, are we going to be, especially at the larger centers, say the CRC centers, are we going to be able to do some kind of a Schoology for the staff who are working there so they can help our kids get online, get to where their assignments? Because our kids they're just not going to be home with their parents, not all of them, no way.
So we do have a team who is working on childcare, and so this is something that we'll take to them, and we'll make sure that we connect with Jeremy and IT, with Shauna, who's overseeing that work, get that together so that we can find out where our kids will be who are not at home, and then work with those providers to see about Wi-Fi as well as access to Schoology. So thank you for that. I wrote that down. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Bates? Okay. Ms. Bowers, you want to try again?
You hear me?
Yes.
Oh.
Boy, can you
gosh. All right. I have one inquiry, and I have a comment, and I have several questions. Superintendent, when you were doing your presentation, we talked about the August 24th, the return to school, and the week of September 14th review, and for lack of better terms, somewhat of a progress monitoring. Are we doing monitoring before the 14th? Maybe kind of check-in days before that, and then the review is actually reviewing to the board, and then the 28th is going to be dependent on how things are going with the I guess the color scale the governor uses, as well as 14 days of decrease or what have you, and positivity. So I was concerned about the 14th being the review, is that a review to maybe report out, or is that when you're going to look and see where things are? Are we doing that between the 24th and the 14th?
The 14th is just a benchmark date. We look at the data on a daily basis that comes from the health department. And then on a weekly basis, we look at the data with a physician from Children's Hospital, and he does some modeling to look at other counties, other school districts that are similar to ours. So I just gave those as benchmark dates to say, families, if when we're ready to go back, this is a benchmark date that we could look towards. So it's not just kind of open-ended and forever. Right. So we're looking at the data on a daily basis.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. And then I think Board Member Messer asked about grading. And I'm thinking of grading as the end of a midterm or something, but I want to know about ongoing grading and putting data into the book and getting information back daily or weekly, because I know that those were some factors daily in the spring as motivators or lack of motivation for students because of the end result being pass or fail. But I'm inquiring more about how will we monitor this weekly, and how will parents and students be able to see a grade in the book if distance learning is something that the board, the will of the board is once conversation happens, if this is something that has to happen for the the first 5 or 6 weeks. So can we clarify if there's going to be actual weekly, daily grading input into a Power School or Schoology?
Absolutely. Grading will be continuous, and grading can be accessed through Power School. So parents and students have access to Power Schools, but it's not just a final or semester grade. It is throughout the year as we would do in in-person learning.
Okay, good, which is a little bit different than I think the quarter was at the end. And then for the Cincinnati Digital Academy, I had a question, Deputy Superintendent Ahmad, regarding your deadline for August 7th. Now, what if I'm a parent and I decide that, okay, well, we're doing remote learning or distance learning, the term that we're using is distance learning, and I'm going to pull my child who I signed up for CDA. I'm going to say no CDA. I'm going to put them at Kilgore, where their home school is. That's where their school is. What if on the 28th, now will they have to stick to that if blended learning occurs after, on the 28th or so, and I'm still not comfortable with my child coming back, what happens to them now that they've enrolled at CDA or never enrolled at CDA and stayed at their home school? What happens?
Do an intra-district transfer at any time. That is why it's also important that all of our sites use district-adopted curriculum to ensure that there are no gaps in learning. We are all following the same scope and sequence. But they will have the opportunity, if we would go back in person or blended learning, to transfer to CDA if they are not comfortable.
Okay, now my other question is on the other end of the spectrum. As a parent, if I am enrolled in CDA and I elected to stay there for the year because I'm just not comfortable with my child coming back at all for this year, and I'm a senior, would I be able to graduate from my home school, or would I have to graduate from virtual high school?
The state requires that CDA is a school, so you would be a graduate of CDA. They have their own IRN. So if you are a senior and you stay the full year, you would be a graduate of CDA.
So that forces me to stay at my school, even though I'm not comfortable with blended learning.
If I could answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, my apologies. So this is a conversation that we had last week that we're going to check with the state about. So we have grave concerns about a young person who was at Hughes from grade 7 through 11th grade, and now they're a senior, and they opt, because we're in a pandemic situation, to go to CDA, and they want to have a diploma that says Hughes, when they've spent their entire academic career as a high school student at choose except for that last year. And so we're looking at that because we don't think that, quite honestly, that is the fair or right thing to do by our young people, especially if they've spent that entire time at their school. We understand how people are tied to their schools and they want to have that pride of I graduated from X school. So that was a conversation that we had last week, and we are looking into that with the Ohio Department of Education. So more to come.
Okay, thank you. And I just have two more questions. Can you clarify, Assistant Superintendent Bunty, about the students with disabilities and remote learning? Now, what I thought I heard was they will be doing remote learning, and then there'll be some conversations or decisions regarding teacher team for students who may need some hands-on kind of experiences. But then I also thought I heard that ESL, for students that are maybe new to newcomers, that they will be in the building 2 to 3 days a week.
So remote learning, our students will be remote. So if they need different kinds of materials or different types of instruction, then that will occur in a remote environment. Okay. When we go blended, you're exactly right. There are some students who may be going for 5 days a week based on need, and that's what's determined by the IEP team.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then one last question for Assistant Superintendent Murphy. I heard her talk about the pause for athletics as far as moving forward with maybe some type of competition that they will have in volleyball or soccer or football during this particular time. But I also heard her say that the people or students will continue to utilize whatever schedule they currently are working on for skills. Where are these, where is this happening? If we're not in school, is this still happening at school? Is this happening on our property? I mean, where is this happening and how are students getting there?
Yes, so there's currently the skills. We're at that phase right now, and it's happening on our campuses, on Cincinnati Public School property. You may recall the first phase was an outdoor phase. Phase 2 is an indoor phase. And then the next phase would be a competition among schools. We are not moving to the competition among and between 2 schools.
Okay.
So we're going to allow them to continue their skills, to be able to demonstrate to the collegiate professionals that they are scholarship worthy, but there will not be contact competition.
And they will not be sharing balls or anything of that sort during this time. And we will have in place all of the precautionary measures, mask wearing, to the extent that it is feasible. And so what I'm saying, I'm not saying that there's an option to wear a mask, but if it gets really hot and the kids are conditioning outside, then maybe we don't have conditioning because it's too hot for them to wear a mask and condition at the same time. And so again, we're just really trying to err on the side of keeping everybody safe. We're not trying to limit the activities for our young kids, but we're also looking at if school isn't physically in session in terms of face-to-face, then sports probably should follow that same guideline, especially when we consider the contact sports require you handling the same ball.
I totally agree. But our families expected to get the students there as they have been when school starts, and even though school has started and we're allowing the skills, our families going to still be able, I mean, how are the kids getting to these events? The practice, is it optional, or are we being responsible for getting them there?
So let me get back to you with the answer to that. So okay. The manager for athletics and I discussed last week is that his staff, Josh Harden's staff, would work with the young people to create videos demonstrating their ability to be able to share with college recruiters, but they would not be engaged in any type of contact with one another. And so I believe that it's more of creating videos and portfolios demonstrating their skills, but I will get back to you more specifically with the plan for athletics.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, listen, I see, we got two more board members. We're gonna give a chance to speak. Then we gotta move on, guys. So hopefully everybody's getting their questions and comments in. Mr. Lindy.
Thanks, President Jones. I have two sets of questions. One's just trying to understand the data a little bit better, and those may be to Laura, they may be to our guest from Children's. And then I had another set of questions, and I wanted to raise about the Deputy Amat's presentation that I thought was really exciting. So on the data front, I think President Jones, just in the interest of being as efficient as possible, I'll just share what all the questions are, and then whoever and in whatever order makes sense. I appreciate folks' thoughts. First, I'm trying to understand on the data of a sustained decline. If somebody could just say a little bit more about what that means, particularly because at least as I'm looking at the data, it looks like we're on a sustained decline. And so I wanted a little bit more clarity on what that is. Also on the positivity rate, I wanted to understand a little bit more about why 5% is an important number. I've heard that, but I would love to understand a little bit more about why. And what's, just to be fully transparent about what's behind my questions, I'm trying to understand, are we really close to a point where we would feel good about the numbers? Are we really far away from a point where we'd feel good about the numbers? Because that feels like an important piece of information that I wanted to understand a little better. Relatedly on data, folks may have seen this who are watching or in the room, but I thought it was interesting that the American Federation of Teachers put out a standard that they thought could be a standard for safe return to schools. They're using some slightly different data. They're asking for a transmission rate that is less than 1%. And I'd love to hear somebody talk a little bit about, what's the difference between the standard we're using and the standard the AFT is recommend. And again, I think the spirit of all of this is, are we really close to being able to go back? Are we really far away from being able to go back? And how has that trended over the last couple of weeks? So those are my questions on the data. I'll pause there and have just a quick thing on Tiana's presentation.
So I'm going to take your very specific questions back and work with our partners at Children to give you a thorough answer, if that's okay.
Sure. That sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Superintendent. I may have misheard what you said. Would you mind just repeating it one time?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Sorry. What I was saying is, could you just repeat what you said a second ago? I had a hard time.
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay.
What I said is that I've captured what I think your questions are. And so what I feel most comfortable with is being able to deliberate with our healthcare professionals to give you a written response back. Is that okay? That was my question.
Yeah, I think I'm not entirely sure. So are we not able to say whether we're close yet or not? Like that feels like if it's true that the data we're seeing puts us in a position where we feel like we're actually very close to feeling like we could be back, but we're just not quite there yet, and we want to see a few more weeks of data. That would lead me to want to ask whether we could push the decision back a week to see whether the data continue to move in a really good direction, and then potentially get kids back in school faster. If instead it's true that we're nowhere close, like we're just not where we need to be, friends, then I think it's very clear that this is exactly the right thing to do. And it may be that we're not sure, we need to go look into it, but that's I think the core of the question I was trying to ask.
So I don't feel confident that I can give you an answer as to whether or not we're close. What I can tell you is that from the 24th, we started a downward trend, but then we popped back up. And so you'll see this erratic data. And if someone wants to pull the slide back up, it's really going up and down. And then we popped back up again on August the 30th. And so we do not have what would be considered a trend to say that we are truly moving in a downward mode as it relates to confirmed cases. Also, we are, not that you compare one group to another, but we are higher than the state is in terms of our positivity rate. And so you can see that there's definitely a downward trend, but you can see that it's very erratic. And so, Melody, you would call this
if she can come down.
Yes,
so
thank you, Melody.
Make sure that the public is hearing you as well.
And I do want to say that in no way, shape, or form is children's co-signing or signing off on anything. She's just telling you what the data is saying.
Yeah, I think when you ask the question about looking for the downward trend, what does that look like? And I think the point is that, there might be some variation. When there's so much variation, you can't hear the signal. And I think that's what's going on right now. So when it's going up and down a lot, it's really hard to be able to say, whether it's this data or any data, what's the system doing? And I think the point that Superintendent made earlier was that we're looking for possibly 14 points in a row or 14 days in a row that we're trending downward to feel comfortable, or that you would feel comfortable saying that this is indeed a decline in the numbers versus up and down where you're not really sure what's happening.
I think that's very helpful. And I just want to reiterate that I think this is, from my perspective, like, when in doubt, we should prioritize the safety of children and teachers and family members. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like a close call to me. And I really do appreciate that perspective. I promised, President, I can be very fast on the Tiana piece. I just wanted to say.
Nobody is keeping their promise tonight about being short. You did good, Ms. Bolton. Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to say, first of all, I think the schedule looks great. And it's really very clear and very helpful. And just very specifically, the idea that there's real-time culture that's happening. Your example was a morning meeting, but just that, kids can feel like they're a part of something in an ongoing, sustained way. I think that is so exciting. And I just want to say thank you. I think that, when I think about, a virtual start, there are a couple things that feel like must-wins for me. This was one of them, that there'd be some kind of live community building. The other ones that feel just like absolute must-wins for the first couple of weeks is making sure that 95% of kids are logging on and are participating. And then second, that there's, we're getting good one-on-one contact with kids to help them knock down barriers around the technology or around, Schoology or whatever it is. Am I right in thinking that those are also must-wins that you and your team are thinking about?
Yes, we have clear metrics that we're going to measure to know, did we implement distance learning successfully? One is around student engagement. The other is looking at student achievement outcomes as well. So we have to remove those barriers and then also put some structures in place so that we're all following, whether it's you must log on, you will be graded on your work and receiving feedback and providing opportunities like small group instruction, parent orientation, to give feedback and support to our families and students.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Ms. Bolton, if this question is quick, I'll let you speak, but otherwise we're going to close you off.
Thank you, Madam President. Point of clarification regarding the curriculum piece. How shall we say, there is not district adopted curriculum for every one of the subjects or state standards. And so I would like a little bit of clarification on that minimally is what we're doing across the board, but I want some reassurance that if indeed Aiken has a particular program, or Kilgore has a particular program, or Walnut does, or Hughes does, we're building that variety also if we have 5, remote days or distance days. I just wanted that we keep the character and the curriculum, but we want minimally this to be happening.
Correct. The lessons that are being uploaded are pre-K through 12, reading, math, science, and social studies.
Okay. All right. So we're going to close this off. And as always, I go last. And so as a result of that, most of my questions have been answered. So I'll just make a couple of comments and then we can close out. Just regarding, I fully support the recommendation. And I think I'm hearing from the group just sort of a unanimous stamp to move forward. One of the pieces that's missing for me with all this is that we have parents, and I think doing these town halls, Superintendent, you're going to find, parents are going to give it to you real. And so one of the things, there's two things I think are going to come up, address one of them that had to do with childcare. And then the other piece for me is who's training the parent in technology? These kids can't do it by themselves, so who's working with them on that? You should have just stayed down, Ms. Ahmad.
Virtual training will be at all of our schools. Right now we're planning in early August. So we're not sure if it's going to be grade level, by department. So we're doing that at each school, but the training will take place from school to school. Okay. For parents specifically. But most importantly, I think I just want to get out there. We are developing videos. So the one that you saw for the teachers, we are working on those videos as well that we can upload to our website, YouTube, social media that parents can refer back to on how to gain access to PowerSchool or Schoology.
Okay, thank you. And then my final comment has to do again with the town halls. I'm really happy that they are separated out so that it's very different for staff than it is for parents. And I want to do as much as we can do to make sure that the integrity of that is maintained. Parents, and I'm sure everybody sitting here has heard that, parents who are just confused about how we're moving forward, they need the opportunity to ask parent questions. So I really appreciate that. And then in closing, I just want to take an opportunity to thank particularly all of our partners. We've said it, but I don't think we can say it enough. And I want to say to our public, whether, this pandemic brings out the good, the bad, and the ugly in all of us, and we've experienced that. But when all is said and done, we have heard what our public has told us. We have heard what parents have told us. We have heard what our students have told us. We appreciate all the efforts from our partners to help and provide the assistance for us. So we feel like we're in a good place right now with moving forward, and we're going to have a good year. So in that, I'm going to close it out, and we are ready to move on to hearing of the public. Okay?
Point of clarity.
Yes.
I think this is important that for the public, that when we move on from this, is it correct in assuming that since we have seemingly unanimously approved this plan, that once we end this portion of the meeting, that virtual start will be what happens?
That is what and I'm hearing this, tell me different, but just based on the conversation, we're leaving this conversation with giving the superintendent the okay to move forward with the plan to go virtual at the start of the year.
Because at the last meeting, we all voted, if folks recall, and there were maybe 1,000 people who weren't here, we voted to give the superintendent the ability to change the plan as needed. So the vote already happened. So the point is the vote doesn't have to take place. We are beginning virtual.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's move on here. Okay, so we are now at the item on the agenda for hearing the public. Consistent with the state's direction to minimize public gatherings, we are convening this video conference to include opportunity for public comment. Here are the specific instructions for participation in hearing of the public. To speak during the hearing of the public, your request must be received during the first 10 minutes of the meeting by clicking on the hand icon on your screen. Treasurer Wagner will be the timekeeper and will make every effort to call each speaker in the order received. Once the request has been granted by Treasurer Wagner, you will receive a notice on your screen. Click yes to go interactive. If you do not want your video active, please disable the video camera icon. After speaking, you will briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. I'm going to repeat that. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. When the buzzer goes off, your 2 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing personnel items. We respectfully ask that your public commentary be respectful of all those listening in. Thank you for your cooperation. Treasurer Wagner.
Okay, our first speaker tonight is Leticia Cunningham. Go ahead, Leticia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to first say that I definitely do agree with the recommendation as a parent of multiple kids in the Cincinnati Public School District. I definitely want to point out that one thing that during the meeting I did not hear and that I was hoping to hear is that you were going to touch on also making sure that you connect with the teachers on their mental well-being. I know that this has actually caused a lot of teachers frustrations, a lot of them stress, and I definitely want to make sure that the teachers have a good support system because we're asking them to also step out and do a lot of things that they have not had to do before as far as in their own classrooms. Also, digital learning. As a past PTA president, one of the things that parents have been bringing to me in my inbox and email is that they have been calling for digital learning because they have questions, but that the digital learning phone number has not, no one's picking it up. So I'm not sure if that's because they're receiving a big volume, but I definitely would like for someone possibly to look into that. Also, one of the board members hit on that they wanted to possibly delay, possibly look out. This is something that I'm glad that you all said you don't have to vote on it, and this is something that we're going to do because definitely this is something that parents needed to know 2-3 weeks ago because of school supplies, because of uniforms, because of work scheduling, because of having to make provide, for their children because they work during the day. So I'm glad that we're actually now giving the parents some time to actually make the adjustments in their own personal lives that they're going to need. The one question that I do have is when will the internet and the Cincinnati Bell.
Ms. Cunningham, I'm sorry, but your 2 minutes are up. I'm sorry, we have to cut. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Katie Fiorelli. Go ahead, Katie.
Hi, are you able to hear me? Hi, members of the board. I wanted to say thank you very much for everything that you've done. Also, Superintendent Mitchell. I'm a Walnut Hills grad. I'm a huge advocate for Cincinnati Public Schools. But I wanted to ask, on behalf of parents who have CPS preschoolers, particularly those who are in magnet schools, as I understand it, we will not be able to keep our magnet spot if we do not send our kids. And prior to this meeting, there was not a digital option. So I wanted to clarify whether, with the updated information, parents of preschoolers will be able to make the same informed decisions for their health, education, and well-being for their children, have those same rights that parents of K to 6 people in, or K to 6 students in CPS have. So again, my question is, if, let's say, we're 5 weeks in, the data shows that at some level we're comfortable sending our kids, but in general, me personally, I have a 4-month-old at home. My mom helps watch the kids. She's over 60 years old. She's watching them while I'm working. If I'm not comfortable, do I lose my magnet spot? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Typically, Ms. Fiorelli, we do not respond to Q&A, but I do remember you posing that question in an email, and we will make sure that you get a response.
Okay, our next speaker is Susanna Lee. Go ahead, Susanna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm writing to you today on behalf of a group of parents that have been working together. It's a group of parents from the 3 to 6 age group, specifically at Sands Montessori. We have been working with our kids throughout this summer and since we've had blended learning to remote learning to try and protect our kids as much as we can. As parents, we've tried to protect them from the fear and trauma and above all from getting sick. The current plan when we go back to remote learning, or sorry, to blended learning, has preschoolers, I think, returning to 5 days a week. And maybe this is, I don't know how we're going to change this when we go back in person. But our concern is that if we have the preschoolers going back for 5 days a week and the kindergartners are going back in group A and group B, how will we prevent that cross cohort situation? Both the CDC and CPS has recommended the smaller cohorts be separated. And what we're finding with the preschooler and the 3 to 6 age group at the Montessori setting is that that cohort seems to be very disadvantagedly assuming more risk than others. So we, as a group of parents, would like to ask the board to consider how that specific cohort is being addressed if we go back to blended learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Daniel Caproni. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hey, so I'm a teacher at Westtown, and first off, I did want to thank Superintendent Laura and Assistant Superintendent Tiana Amat for the work they did with the sample schedules and all the digital resources for teachers. It's super awesome, and it's along the lines of what I want to talk on, is that the game has changed for education, and I really hope that we keep pushing forward with that and stop trying to push what we knew education to be into this new digital box, because it's not going to fit. So I'm really hoping that we continue to move forward in changing our practices, changing the game, and moving with it instead of against it. With that said, I want to do this in excellence, but also with equity. And a lot of talk has been about Google Meets and live interaction with students. And I noticed, especially at the end of last year, a lot of our students are in economic problems right now, and they've either had to get jobs or have become primary child providers for their younger siblings. So I want to make sure that we don't fully rely on things like that when we're looking at the curriculum that we're developing. So with that, thank you for the resources on Schoology and whatnot. But I really think the teacher's personal touch is what's going to make a difference in our students' lives. And with that, making videos, recording videos, editing videos takes a ton of time. I ask that when you're moving forward, please consider the amount of time teachers will need for planning. Do not forget it. At the end of last year, we ran into a huge issue with teachers having to constantly not just contact parents, but record those contacts in 4 different places, taking up huge amounts of time. Please do not forget that if you see planning more, such as I saw in your sample schedules, we don't need to fill that plan time with meetings, with required PD, and with other things. What we really need as teachers is time to plan. I've never heard a student say their life was changed by a curriculum, but I've heard thousands say that their lives have been changed by their teachers. So please let us do our work and let us add that personal touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is David Brenner. Go ahead, David.
Hello. Thank you to the board for letting me have time. First off,
thank you for all the planning. After the last meeting, I was definitely concerned. It looks like there has been outstanding progress in putting the plans together and addressing the concerns that parents had coming into this coming school year. I think that it's very encouraging that a number of the board members have changed their position on the send everybody back to school versus the do remote learning. That shows that you're looking at the data, and I do appreciate that. One thing that I was speaking with my children about while we were watching this is they'd like the additional structure in the school day so they don't feel like they're just hanging out in the wind. One thing that I would hope that you're looking at is what extracurriculars look like, and can we do clubs virtually? Can we do something there just for the social emotional wellness of the students? You know, you have kids doing yearbook and school newspapers and, you know, animation club and whatever. Kids miss that. And then to the comment from the last speaker, making sure that, you know, we can replay lectures, I think is one of the big opportunities that we have with the technology, so kids can go back and review lecture notes or class notes as opposed to trying to furiously write everything and missing out on things. Thank you again for the time, and I'm encouraged with how we're going to start this year.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sharon Huizinga, I believe.
Hi, Zinga, but close enough. I'm a recent transplant from Canada and a professor at CCM at University of Cincinnati. This may or may not be the appropriate venue to discuss this in, but I was looking for school board contact information today and saw that there was a meeting with the possibility to speak publicly. I teach lighting and video design for concerts and live events, live theater, and I've had a spectacular career. I was the only woman in my career field when I started, and when I look around now, many of my students are female. And the thing that I'm not seeing when I look around is a diverse population. So when I go to speak to other colleagues in similar programs in other universities, the comment is always, we don't have a diverse population applying from high schools. I believe that that is only because there's a lack of knowledge about the vastness of ready jobs that are available in technical theater. And I'm wondering if it's possible to partner with the Cincinnati School Board as a new person in the community to try and address this through outreach and involvement with high school students throughout Cincinnati, obviously grade 11 and 12, just to make people aware of the vast job opportunities that are available in lighting, event promotion, technical direction, scenic costumes. So I understand you're not allowed to answer questions here, so I'm not entirely sure how to proceed. But essentially what I'm asking from the school board is if there's a willingness to partner in some way for me to be able to do outreach, to promote information about this career field, to recruit for my own program, but in reality, just to spark interest in any student who hasn't had access to the technology and the knowledge. And then to ask for access to either your guidance counselors and or students to be able to present information. Me and my graduate students have many engaging and exciting presentations about virtual reality and on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you. And let me just say this to the entire public audience. We typically do not respond directly to questions. However, you are certainly welcome to contact the board office here at the Ed Center, and our administrative staff will make sure that your inquiries or questions are addressed. So that number is 363-0040.
Our next speaker is Jamie with no last name.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. CPS parent, a working parent of a child that is in a specialized classroom. My child is too old to go to normal daycare. So the first 5 weeks is going to be a struggle as it is because I can't send him to daycare and I work. I'm a nurse. So I guess my question is, I know you can't answer it right now, is after the first 5 weeks, if we don't go back, is there a plan in place for these kids that are have a disability that enter specialized classrooms that will not be returning?
You got the question? Okay. The superintendent has documented the question, and we'll make sure that she includes it. We're not sure, maybe in your town hall or, okay. We will be, she'll be able to address it in the town hall.
Okay, our next speaker is Emily Marchman. Go ahead, Emily.
Now am I working? Yes. Okay. Hi, I'm a preschool disability teacher in the district. I have a loved one who's vulnerable, and I also have students and families who are vulnerable. And I'm so glad that you made this choice. I have some concerns. I saw on the latest thought exchange survey we got that a principal had said they wouldn't wear a mask or enforce masks in their school, even though we know that's the best way to stop the spread. And I also have parents who have said they don't want their student to return at all. And with preschool, they can't do the online digital academy. So I'm glad we're doing digital. I think that will help her for now, but giving her intervention services virtually is something I can do, but it wouldn't be safe right now for itinerant services to go in. So I guess it's just something to think about. I'm a little concerned about the required COVID test, just that could be a waste of resources. Because that's just from the moment in time you take the test that someone could go out and get exposed immediately after, and you kind of have a false sense of security. But I also see that it's valuable group data. But all in all, I'm really glad we made this decision, and I'm looking forward to learning and working on my digital and virtual teaching. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Brennan Grayson.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, President Jones, board members, and Superintendent Mitchell. My name is Brennan Grayson. I'm with the Cincinnati Interfaith Worker Center, but I'm also a CPS parent, and I see that 1,700 attendees are listening still. And I just want to say, on behalf of my two kids, Jack and Eleanor, that really sincerely and dearly miss Miss Casey, Miss Pathick, Miss Wheeler, Miss Jenny, Miss Lois in maintenance, Jeremy in resource, Miss Erin in the Y program. Our lives and our family were so enriched by the contributions to the school system that came from these women and a handful of men who helped run the Parker Woods School. And I just want to acknowledge them and say that they are deeply missed and were deeply missed this spring. But we, our kids appreciate and know that the school board is doing the best thing for them and for the community by keeping the schools remote. So having said that, I just also want to say a few things in my capacity as the director of the Cincinnati Interfaith Worker Center. I'm here to stand in solidarity with the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers and the other unions that were calling for the remote learning, and to thank you all for joining in solidarity with your teachers and other staff for doing so. I'm also here to talk a little bit about the food program that the Cincinnati Interfaith Worker Center ran as part of a free store food bank program. And I want to thank you all for making the decision to run the food campuses at all, or to run the food distribution at all campuses. So something that was really amazing that happened in the spring was that not only did food services deliver food at 24 campuses to students, but also dozens of community groups and food banks came together to distribute free food on an essentially
Mr. Grayson, I'm sorry, but your 2 minutes are up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nicholas Simmons. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Hi, thanks for taking my comments. I'm calling in as an alumni, CPS, as well as a family member, and I want to thank you for choosing to do the remote learning. It's the right choice. And kind of going off what Mr. Lindy was saying about asking the question, really, how close are we knowing the data and seeing these different data points? It's obvious we're not close at all as a nation. And I really appreciate your planning it with the agility in mind, but I think if we spend our resources and our time, geared more towards the remote learning until really we're actually in a closer range, I think that's just a better way to use our time and resources. Like I said, I don't think we're close at all, and I think if everyone really looks at the bigger picture, we know we're not close. So the agility is great, but I'd rather not spend too much time on wanting to get back into the schools until really us as a nation have tackled COVID as we should, and I don't think we're doing that. But regardless, I think the CPS school board superintendent are making the right decisions going forward. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alicia Rogers. Go ahead, Alicia.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's on the board and the administration. The anti-racism link that's available to give suggestions from the public is not working. And then I also wanted to say that in the instructions today, it told us that we would have 3 minutes of the public. So I prepared a speech. Can you guys hear me?
Hello.
Hello?
Rogers, can you repeat what you just said?
It has like 2 different people. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So what I first said was thank you. And then I also said the anti-racism link for the public to share their opinion. It hasn't been working for about 2 weeks. And even at this moment, you cannot share what you think should be added. Also, the instructions for people to speak publicly today, it said 3 minutes, so I prepared something. I'm going to try to get it under 2. Our top priority is equity in childcare. Should we begin this year remotely? I've addressed some suggestions by the way of a few of our strategic plans. Number 1, community engagement and influence should allow this pandemic to jumpstart or for some solidify the necessary community partnerships and involvement by creating childcare locations that are separated by zip code, potentially YMCAs, rec centers, churches who aren't in session, and community learning centers who are able to host students within safety guidelines. All students will not need childcare, but for the families that are unable to work and pay bills without childcare deserve to have the choice and option. Number 2, optimize capabilities. Do we as a district understand our organization's main demographic provider? Especially during the pandemic, we should understand that our parents are facing literally the decision of where their child will go in less than a month. Are the contact list of our parents updated? Do we have the capability to collect data regarding our parents' biggest barriers? We have to get really specific. I propose that we send a short survey to all of our parents asking these questions. Should we go remote? Do you have solid plans for childcare? Do you work part or full-time? And what zip code do you reside in? And finally, number 3, growth. What does growth look like for CPS this year? Could it be we will have the least amount of COVID cases within Hamilton County schools? Could it be we grew our parent and community engagement by 100% due to our efforts to create child care enrichment options outside of our CPS buildings to keep our students safe and parents supported? No one is prepared to lose an administrator, teacher, support staff.
Ms. Rogers, I'm sorry. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leslie Mooney. Go ahead, Leslie.
Hello, yeah. First of all, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the work of each school's operations committee. I've seen that firsthand, and I've really been impressed and will feel very confident sending my kids back into one of the largest elementary schools in the district when the superintendent deems that it's appropriate to do so. So I would love for that information to get even more widely dispersed throughout the different parents and teachers so everybody can feel as comfortable and as in the know as I do. Second of all, I'd just like to point out some things around equity for you guys, some sort of food for thought to think about with this 100% digital learning option. It would behoove us all to start thinking now about how CPS prepares students, and I know you all are, but as opposed to waiting until the potential of not going back at all in person is right in front of us, to start thinking now about potentially even some really radical things like extending the school year to making it almost a year-round scenario for this pandemic situation, because as I see fellow parents contemplating and some choosing to have private tutors, to have one parent stay home, to make these choices that obviously lots of parents, including myself, are not able to make, it's going to create an even wider divide than we already have. So, and with that, I would also suggest a possibility of a stipend for families to either pay for childcare or someone to come in the house. The plans that you laid out for digital learning sound great on paper, but will be really ridiculously difficult for families like mine and many others to actually have happen. And on that note, finally, I just would say that the rec centers, the YMCAs, as others have noted, other community arts and cultural and service organizations are going to be stepping up to help serve the children and have them have a safe place to go. And so I know you already have.
Ms. Mooney, thank you so much. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leticia.
Hello. I was excited to hear about students in special ed classes being able to go to school in person. But I also feel we need to accept that some students with IEPs that are in the traditional classroom really struggle and do not succeed with the online option. And so maybe allowing them to attend in person as well as there's room. My daughter personally did not do well. All of her services were online and she got nothing out of them. So just keep that in mind. And then also, you had mentioned that this year will be graded based upon and attendance would be taken. But I'm curious as to what will happen to the students when parents are working and kids can't get logged on. Do they just get marked absent and or a failing grade? And then also, as an employee, I've spent 3.5 hours this morning in line for COVID testing and know several people who waited behind me and then were turned away at the last minute. So if the employee testing does actually continue to be a requirement, I'd ask that you consider a scheduled day or location for only employees, so that way we're not waiting that tremendous amount of time to be turned away when they run out of testing and or run out of time. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Helena Minasian.
Hello, I am a 10th grade teacher, and I just want to say thank you so much for doing distance learning. I am currently pregnant, so I am at high risk, and I felt very stressed out about not really having a choice of what I wanted to do this year. I felt like kids had a choice of doing the online option, but teachers basically had two choices. And one was to go the whole year without making any money by doing a leave of absence. And the other one was to perhaps risk my health, my husband's health, my family's health, and the health of my unborn child. So thank you so much for going to distance learning. I'd just like to say that I think a separate day, what the previous speaker was saying, for only employees is a great option if we do have to do the COVID testing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jillian Celia. Go ahead, Jillian. Okay, we'll come back to her. Next speaker would be Shona. Go ahead, Shona.
Wondering what I was just wondering what is going to be like I have a couple things. So hello?
Yes,
Can you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So with the professional development, you guys gave a loose date, and I'm wondering, are there going to be more things put in place? I heard tonight that there are a lot of programs or classes that teachers can take. However, I'm wondering if they will be mandatory so that all teachers are on the same page. As well as I see that you guys have 35,000 students and you guys reached approximately 10,000 students with giving the devices out. How do you guys plan on reaching parents and students faster than that? As well as I'm thinking that you guys need a better platform or some type of way to address parents with all your updates. I am one parent and have spoken with over 1,000 parents and families in 3 different neighborhoods. And out of those 1,000 parents, I've only heard of 2 parents who've been getting proper updates. They haven't received anything from the school staff, email, or robocall, and it gets a bit frustrating. You guys want the community to pitch in. However, it seems like you guys pick what community members can pitch in and the value of their help. We want to reach as many people as possible. And I think you guys need to let everyone who's willing to help actually help and not turn down things or coordinate with the community as a whole. Also, what community members and families are you guys speaking with that are giving you the statistics and data information that you guys are giving out, even with the anti-racism? Why aren't you guys dealing with the families and parents and students who have actively made complaints and figure out what is the problem? How can you guys adjust it, work with the families, the parents, and the students to make it more inclusive so that.
Thank you. Thank you. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Carrie, Kari, with no last name.
Hello, is it there? Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry, thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for allowing this forum for us to have a public time to speak, and also for your thoughtful considerations. I am a single parent of 3 children and Cincinnati Public, 2 at one school, 1 at a different one, and I'm also a graduate of Walnut Hills, so I went through CPS my whole life, minus 1 year. So a few things I just wanted to kind of throw out there as questions. One was, as far as if we do return to in-person schooling, how will that look in the form of the magnet Montessori's as far as shared manipulatives and peace corners and things like that our children sort of rely upon and are somewhat a part of the pedagogical model? And then if not in the school buildings, how does that translate to remote learning? How on home days are children going to have real-time help, obviously because the teacher is in teaching time with the other group, the AB group or however you guys are calling that. I wanted to also know, as far as this, need that parents will have for childcare, especially like single parents. Luckily, my youngest is going into third grade, so I kind of dodged a bullet as far as when the pandemic hit, as far as that goes. But what will that look like for those parents as far as building those sort of networks for them? As we know, there's a lot of that in our school system, our most vulnerable children. As far as partnerships with testing goes, I heard a teacher prior, just a few before, speak on that as far as her waiting in line, which really isn't so much my question. My question more fits into the whole notion of the turnaround time for testing. And if you have partnerships with children's, will there be partnerships with the health department or whomever is going to be overseeing large and mass testing as far as turnaround time? Because I know there were tests that were administered at the Walnut Hills site about 3 weeks ago, and people waited over 14 days for their test results, which pretty much nullifies the exercise of doing it and then doesn't help hamper or prevent the spread in the schools. Another point would be to rally, as you suggested, Superintendent.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes are up.
Our next speaker is Valda Freeman Carmo.
Hi, I'm a parent of 3 children at CPS, one at Walnut Hills who's a senior, and 2 that have special needs. So my questions are usually focused around special needs. But the one thing I wasn't clear on the metrics that you're going to be sharing with the superintendent's going to be collecting on how many people have been exposed, is that going to be open to the public? So in the case that we go back to school, I'll be able to be informed, like, okay, and I'm not even clear what would happen if one child in one school, does that mean the whole school shuts down for 14 days? I'm not clear on that. And then the other, but I do agree with the board's decision and the recommendation. I think it's too soon and too risky. So I applaud you for having the courage to do that. The second question has to do with devices. I've been getting all the robocalls to pick up, and I thought since my kids have a computer at home, I didn't need to. But now, from reading the website, it looks like that they actually have to have a CPS device. That's not clear to me if they have to have one or if they have their own, they can use it, because I'm not clear what happens when they go to blend it, or they not ever going to have paper in school and they're expected to bring the computer back and forth. I just need some clarity on that. It can be posted on the website. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is April with the last initial C.
Yes, I applaud the board for making the decision to go virtual, and also thank you, Dr. Bowers, for asking the question which I had about. I really want my girls to participate in the virtual portion, but before you guys made the decision, had was leaning strongly towards going to the digital academy. So I wanted the opportunity for them to reconnect with their teachers, but I still do not feel comfortable with them going back to school until the virus is under control. And the one question I did have for the board is with the recent study that came out from the report from the CDC with the campers in Georgia, where everyone was tested, the staff and the campers before they came in, but yet over 260 tested positive for the virus, and where it was spread, from K up to 12, K through 12, it spread. And so although all weren't wearing masks, the staff were, so we know how children are with wearing masks in school. So it really concerned me and wondered how that would influence your safety plan in the future with this new data. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marcia Futel.
Good evening, board members. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Great. First of all, I am so pleased and so relieved about the decision tonight to start with remote learning. I want to thank you, board, for having the foresight and courage to be nimble. And many, many, many thanks to Superintendent Mitchell and her staff. Tonight I was paying particular attention to Deputy Superintendent Ahmad's presentation. And I guess what I want to say tonight and emphasize tonight, how important it is to make sure that the orientation for parents is done in the right kind of way. Although you've made the decision to start on August 24th, I have grave concerns about starting on August 24th, only because the parent communication has not been as robust as it needs to be or as clear as it needs to be. I applaud you for having the town hall meeting, and I agree with Board President Jones that it needs to be just parents, but the orientation is very, very critical, and it can't be pieced together. It can't be just videos. It's got to be an opportunity for parents and those of us in those villages like myself to learn how to support our students. So I want to encourage you to make sure that the communication home is robust and quick. We only have a couple of weeks, and there's a lot of things that parents are trying to juggle, my daughter included. I'm going to tell her she doesn't have to come up with her own schedule. She'll be excited about that. But there's so many other things that need to be communicated to parents, and so far the communication has not been the best. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you again for coming to the decision that you came to tonight.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Hannah, and I believe it's Shaikh.
Yes, it is. Thank you. You're actually the first person to ever pronounce it correctly. My concerns, first of all, thank you for going digital. As children, or as I have children with high risk, that was a main concern of mine, was how to get my kids' education while having to have them attend public school. That being said, my concern now is the fact that when we do go back to in-person school, are we going to be able to maintain remote learning for high-risk kids, or are we going to be forced to put our kids in in-person learning? Another concern of mine is the fact that due to scheduling conflicts, not everybody has an 8-to-5 schedule. Are we going to be able to access our students' lessons when we have time? If we get home at 10 a.m., can we log on and with our students and take them through their day, or does it have to be 8 to 4 or 9 to 4 or whatever our school sessions is? Just a couple thoughts I've had for the board to see if we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is somebody with 2 letters, NN.
Good evening. I'm Natasha Nutter, a member of CFOP, Cincinnati Federation of Office Professionals for Cincinnati Public Schools. Thank you for allowing me time to share my concerns and opinions. This statement or any other correspondence that I've had with CPS leaders or board members is not intended to attack anyone. I've been with CPS since 2014 as a school secretary. During this pandemic, I have felt invisible. Why does this matter to you, the community we serve? I hope it matters to you because all of us have value. Nobody, including support staff, should feel invisible in a public school district. Me feeling invisible is based on my experience and opinions. This pandemic has been challenging for all of us. Clerical staff returned to work in April. At that time, I asked for help with scheduling interviews. My request was denied. A discipline hearing was—
Ms. Nutter, we are not allowed to use this as a format for any personnel concerns. I apologize. Thank you.
Me during the pandemic, so I was expressing my concerns because I would hate for this to happen to anyone else, and I don't want any others.
It is a personnel concern. It is a personnel concern. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Trevor Pryor.
Hello, it's a pleasure to greet each of you this evening. It's getting very late. I'm typically do not join these forums, but people I've been in contact with over the summer suggested that I join tonight, and I'm very glad I did. I'm so proud of our district, so proud of the presentations I heard tonight, and it just makes me I'm full of glee. But what I want to share with you, I did get in line today for the Army Corps of Engineers COVID testing. I didn't realize until this evening, until I typed my question in the chat, that that's who ran the COVID testing. So I'm just wondering if we can contact them to set up appointments, because I still care for my elderly parents. My mother was of the first graduating class of Taft High School. She's a senator. And since my questions were answered in the chat room by the moderator, I want to say thank you to the moderator. But I did want to show a picture of Harriet Ward. She passed away this past week. She's a first graduating class of Taft. She's also a senator class of 1957, and she's also in the Hall of Fame, the Athletic Hall of Fame. And I just wanted Mr. Harding to know that so he could acknowledge her passing with COVID. But the good news I wanted to share was 2 graduates from CPS have written a book over COVID. And these 2 people, one went to Performing Arts and one went to Walnut Hill. So they got together and collaborated online and wrote a book that's available on Amazon. I'm not getting paid for that. I'm just wanted to say I'm very proud of people who are using their time wisely. So thank you for the meeting. Thank you for answering my questions. And I'm looking forward to having a great year. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Anna Cooley. Go ahead, Anna. Anna, you there? Okay, we'll come back to her. Holly Miller. Go ahead, Holly.
I just wanted to for all of your diligent efforts and trying to keep us all safe. I know this has been very difficult work. Express my concerns. I am out.
We've lost you. We can't hear you.
Ms. Miller, if you want to put your comments in the chat, I'll make sure the board member sees it, because we can't hear you.
Okay.
Our
Can
next...
you...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for concerns, and I would urge you to strongly look at the science.
Ms. Miller, I'm sorry, but you're breaking up. You're breaking up. So yeah.
Our next speaker is Angela Cole. Angela, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I just want to say, I think it's a great start that we're going remote, but if anybody's watching the news, I don't think I appreciate the focus on learning. However, I did just spend the past year getting my master's in film instruction, and we even talked about trauma. I think right now the entire nation is in a crisis. We're going through trauma, and we cannot learn if we don't feel safe. I don't care how anything is set up. So if we're coming to school and we have temperature checks, 6 feet apart and we have masks, how much is learning really going to happen? And what are we really trying to get our kids back to? I appreciate the connection and getting internet and making those connections, because that's what our kids need. They need people to talk to. But I don't know that we necessarily need to shove content down their throat. I mean, I get the schedule, and yes, we need that because we all need that to function. But I definitely think we need to think about what our roles are as teachers and as parents. I have both. I'm wearing both hats right now. So I get wanting my kid to stay on point and be with everybody else, but what is taking a year off, and what does that really mean? And we're testing for who and testing for what? Like, let's get our services straight. Let's get our communities straight. Let's get our minds straight, and then let's talk curriculum. But let's get those connections, 100% amen connections, but let's stay home. We don't have to be in a room to connect.
Our next speaker is Annie with no last name.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I totally agree with what she just said. That's beautiful. I want to commend everyone for an absolutely phenomenal job in relying on the scientific data. I've been really just nervous about, having to send two of my children. I have a fifth grader and a preschooler. I'm sorry. And so you have just brought so much joy to my day, and so much ease, and I'm so grateful. So we are a distancing family. We've been a mask-wearing family since March. We also have a vulnerable individual in our house, and so with the governor saying, that there might be a potential shutdown from October through January, I just ask you again to keep following that data and working with our community partners with children. This has been beautiful to hear about in making that decision, because I agree that we should keep it remote through till the end of this pandemic. Let's see. So I'm really happy about the inclusion of preschool. That I wasn't sure what to do with our preschooler, so I'm happy that they're included in this online learning. I've been teaching in the online realm for 5 years now, so mostly college freshmen and sophomore, and significant learning does happen in the remote platform. It takes a lot of front loading and course design. As was addressed tonight, a lot of front loading and course design, and that students, for all those teachers out there, right, who haven't done this in a successful way yet to teach in the remote context, students need a lot of feedback in that first couple of weeks. So I think the orientation week is a beautiful idea, and then immediately they need that feedback that get them going that first couple of weeks, and they will perform for you if you connect with them and give them that feedback on their work. I advise that teachers also I would hope that they stay positive. I have one other note here.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you.
Next speaker, excuse me, is Erin Carpenter. Go ahead, Erin.
Bring up 2 points. First is that as we are looking at re-entering school, whether that's in September or at a different date, but as we look at reanalyzing the situation that Cincinnati is in, I want to bring up two kind of demographic factors that are unique to our K through 3 kids. And those are first that studies have shown that this is a critical time to get these kids engaged in learning, engaged in school, and that we're really setting the foundation for them for their cognitive development and their social emotional development for the long term. At the same time, and I know you have the Cincinnati children's people there with a lot more scientific knowledge than I have, but recent studies have come out that kids under age 10 are less at risk of being spreaders of COVID than their kids age 10 to 19. So I would urge you to consider just keep that nuance in mind as there may not be a blanket solution for all of CPS. It may, the solution may be to fragment the student audience. And then secondly, regarding the anti-racism policy, I would encourage you to be louder and more aggressive in your communication to the parent population. I'm someone that has been actively looking for information about this, and this is the first time that I was hearing that that parents had an opportunity and the community had an opportunity to weigh in the policy. So please amplify that, and I'm expecting that there will be some changes to curriculum as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is G.A. Holloway.
Hello, and thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you for everything that the board has come up with so far. I think it's an incredible thing for us to hold back for those first 5 weeks to go virtual. What I would like to say is, from what I'm hearing, is that there may be, if there is a possibility to increase the training for the parents in regards to more of a homeschooling type curriculum, because it seems like a lot of the parents are feeling the same way, 50-50. Let's say most of them do not want to send their kids back to the environment. So I think a lot of these parents do not have the training to help their children out, whether they're at home or not. So that, just an idea, that might be something to look at, as to increase the training for the parents that are going to be at home helping their kids, because the feedback response from this past quarter was very minimal or reduced from the teachers. They couldn't get back in time. It wasn't a quick response back, and by that time, the grade was over. So that's all I have, and thank you for your time, and great job.
Our next speaker is Lisa M.
Hi, good evening. I have a few things. First, I wanted to tell Sharon from UC. I teach at AWL, and we do have clubs virtually. We've been doing it all summer. And I have a quick question. So teachers will be teaching remotely, but will the teachers be teaching from their home, or will they be teaching in their school? Because we have supplies at school, but it would be safer to be at home.
I think we might have lost her.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to tell Sharon from UC, I teach at AWL, and we've been doing clubs remotely all summer long, and we did it at the end of last school year. So if she wants to talk to Sierra Harper at AWL, she's a good person to call. I've got a question. Teachers will be teaching remotely, but will teachers be teaching from their home or from their school? I didn't hear anybody bring that up or say anything about that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Kristen Copeland.
Hi, thank you. I didn't realize I was going to be attending a late night event this evening. I'm a parent of 2 Walnut Hills girls, one in 11th grade who has signed up to take 5 AP classes, and one who will be entering 9th grade who has 7 bells. I am hearing and listening to the other parents talk. I hear there's a lot of concern about going to school, and so there's a lot of interest in the digital options, but I will say that for my rising 11th grader, that did not go well last year, and she and I both are very concerned about how she's going to learn 5 AP classes online. I also heard the superintendent say that this pandemic was not something we ever signed up for, and that's certainly the case for my daughters who submitted these requests in February. I also heard an interest in agility and trying to respond and flex to parents, and I would encourage the district to listen to the few teachers and parents and students who do want to attend online classes, and maybe there's an option to provide an online option just for them. It does sound like there's a lot that don't feel safe. We need to be able to switch we need to be agile, we need to respond to data. So if things are not working well, we need to be able to make changes. We need more information about the Digital Academy. I hear the deadline is August 7th, and there's no information about what options are available to my daughter to do the online options. And last, my daughter, my 11th grader, is working at Kroger 5 days a week wearing a mask, and I go to Children's 5 days a week and wear a mask. So there's some of us that can go in and use proper hygiene and be essential workers. And I want to encourage the district to flex to the options that can suit the entire district. Thanks so much for your time.
Our next speaker is Lori. No last name. Lori, you with me?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello. Okay. I just want to say that I'm really disturbed and very sad for the students of CPS. I don't believe you're following the science. There's been no deaths of children in Ohio, nor Kentucky. And I just feel that we're doing a disservice when our kids have been out of school for 5 months. We have the teachers union on Twitter causing this to be a political issue. You have teachers going on WCPO talking about how scary they are when they're actually traveling to California in a hotbed of COVID and vacationing without a mask around people, no social distancing. I just think that if you're not giving sports to these kids, what are we going to do when these kids are running the streets? Crime is bad in Cincinnati. Our kids are behind. And if you're looking at childcare, you're talking about them going to the YMCA. How is this any different than them being in school? I just feel that you guys have caused a big problem. The cases are not up in Ohio. They're actually been down, especially in Hamilton County. And this really disturbs me. And this is going to only take kids out of CPS and send them more to the private schools and schools that can give them the needs that they need. And they'll be met in private schools, charter schools, and our kids in CPS are going to fall further behind. And this has become a racial disparity already, and it's only going to cause more in the city of Cincinnati.
Thank you. Our next speaker is somebody named Butterflies.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Mitchell, for your recommendation for remote learning for start of the 2021 academic year. So home improvement establishments, groceries, retail stores, as well as libraries have adopted advanced PPE, specifically plexiglass guards as additional precautionary protection. During a recent visit to the Ed Center, I noticed that plexiglass has been established throughout various locations. Why is there objection to teachers having similar safety shields installed at their immediate teaching area's desk? If so, would teachers incur that expense? Please consider this protective measure. Also, as a comment, no one really knows how long this pandemic will be around, hopefully not too long, but as a positive spin, I admonish high school students and parents to embrace online learning, as this will allow them to become more disciplined and prepared for many employment, enlistment, and enrollment settings that are operating on an online basis to some degree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see if Anna Cooley, are you with us? That's the last one that I've invited and accepted in. Julie got kicked off and we're trying to get her back in. Julie, can you accept your invite?
Well, maybe she leave on her own.
She texts me.
Okay. Well, we have to move on. We have to. Okay. All right. So that is hearing of the public. Let's move on. We got to do our business so we can go home and have dinner and go to bed. Okay. Does anyone have any kudos? Any kudos?
Julie just jumped in.
Oh, Julie just got on. Okay.
All right, go ahead, Julie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to say that I am really thankful that you were able to discuss the anti-racism policy. And I wanted to let you know as a board that CFT over this time that we have created an anti-racism professional development for teachers, by teachers, and that our first session filled up and it was very, very successful. And there were so many people who tried to get on that we have already had to have a repeat session. And I am so proud of the work that our teachers have done developing this professional development, and even teachers from other districts are wanting to be able to take this professional development. And I'm also glad that as a district, you made a formal policy for making sure that face masks are worn in every building, and that you were using the guidance from the state, from Governor DeWine. And I would like to say that I am glad that we will be beginning with remote learning, and it is putting safety first, and I am glad that is our priority for everyone. And it sounds as if the data will be driving the decision. And I know that this is going to be a sigh of relief for many teachers and families this evening. The teacher support systems that we were talking about, we need to make sure that they are necessary. They're necessary for veteran teachers, and they're also necessary for new hires. And we need to make sure that we have the people in place who can be working with our new hires. And as one of the teachers said, teachers will need time to plan because everything is going to be new for them this year. And in order for this to be successful, we need very clear communication with parents and teachers, and it's necessary that as we move forward, that we have a written plan so we know what the expectations are, and that we do not have continual changes day by day or week by week. We need time to be able to work the plan and not have the plan continually change. So I would also like to ask that as the elected officials of Cincinnati Public Schools, that you work with the city of Cincinnati through the memorandum, the policy that they're just now in the process of passing this week, to provide support within the city of Cincinnati for schools, just for Cincinnati Public and other families, that we have assigned testers and tracers, and that they are assigned specifically to CPS, so that as we are doing a robust testing system, we have the people in place for that to happen, and that our tests are not just put to the side. We want to make sure that we have fast results and that we are able to know what is going on in each building with the testing and the tracing. So thank you for all of that you have put into this. I look forward to working with the district as we roll this policy out. And it's important that everybody has a good communication around this. So thank you.
Okay. So now we're ready to move on. Any kudos? Last call. Kudos? One big kudos to the district, to our leadership, to the superintendent, to her staff, to all of our folks who have helped make this possible, to our parents, to our teachers, to all of our, what are the other class? The other staff, everybody. This has been hard. Okay. So we're ready to move forward now. Thank you. Okay, retirements, Ms. Bates. Ms. Bates?
Yes, I have. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have.
Okay, you're breaking up. We can't, you're breaking up.
Does somebody else want to say?
Hold on. We have, if someone has their packets, we have in the packet the retirements, the list of retirements in the superintendent's packet. Okay, here. I think I can do it.
Okay, thanks.
Give me a minute. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lindy.
So we'd like to recognize 3 people this evening for retirements. This is Rana Edwards, Anne Marie Kafori, and Todd O'Neill. Thank you very much for your work in Cincinnati Public Schools, and we wish you the very best in this next chapter.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on, board matters. We have two.
President Jones, there's
what?
On page 8, the civil servants retirements.
Oh, okay. There's on page 8, Mr. Lindy, there's the civil service retirements.
This is why we need Melanie, because I've clearly screwed this up. Page
Melanie,
8.
You're not allowed to be remote.
Page 8. All right. Retirements. We have several other folks to recognize. Reginald Ackers, Karen Dudley, Ivory Durand, Patricia Johnson, Noreen Shearman, and Mary Voschel. We also are grateful for your service to Cincinnati Public, and we wish you the very best in this next chapter.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move forward with board matters. 2 very short items. The first one is I've been in contact with Father Graham, who is expressing interest in us having our joint collaborative meeting, which we are way past due for it. So I want to make sure that board members are okay with us moving forward on setting up a meeting, and we're looking at possibly September, sometime middle to the end of September, to do that meeting, if everybody's okay with it. Yes, Ms. Bolton?
Do we know, I'm very supportive of that, but is that virtual?
It probably will be, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't think we all will fit on this stage. So, yes. Okay. So if it's okay, I'll go ahead and I'll work through our admin to get something scheduled, make sure that we'll make sure everybody is available. And we'll also be asking for a tentative agenda item. So we'll move forward with that. Okay, the next item, board meeting schedule. I believe, Mr. Messer, you posed a question on email one time about our meetings, whether they would be in-house or virtual. Did you want to?
Yeah, I think, obviously it was very helpful for us to be together for this meeting. But I think as we move to the virtual environment for our students, I think it makes sense for us to move to a virtual environment if possible, and maybe use our school opening as kind of our guide to host our meetings, because obviously we've got our own health and concern to be thinking about as well,
Yes.
and that of our staff who has to be also in the room.
Okay. Any other thoughts about that? Okay. I support that. Everybody good with that? Okay. So we'll start scheduling our meetings virtually. Okay. Resolutions. Mr. Messer, I'm going to ask you to do the first resolution.
Hold on, no, I have it. Never mind. Okay, I would like to present a resolution nominating Deb Mariner Alsop and Odell Owens to the Preschool Promise Board of Managers. I present the resolution as written.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Thank you. Discussion. Just to clarify, their terms are up in September. They needed to have this decision by the end of this month. So the timing on this is good. Yes, Ms. Bolton.
Just to thank them for the service that they've already dedicated to
Yes.
this very successful promise that the community made and we made. And we have two of the most outstanding experts we could possibly imagine representing the district.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Mr. Morosky, please present the next resolution.
This is a resolution for graduation requirements, amending policy 5460 that was alluded to earlier in my minutes presentation. I present the resolution as written.
Thanks. Is there a second? I need a second.
Second.
Thanks. Any discussion? Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer? Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Okay, Ms. Bowers, the next resolution.
Yes, I have a resolution adopting new board policy 5466, identification of students at risk of not qualifying for a high school diploma. I present this resolution as written.
Any discussion? Ms. Wagner?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I want to reiterate what board member Morowski had noted in our discussion during our policy meeting with regards to the last paragraph. And I believe we were going to clear that up and clarify the confidentiality part of the mental health services. In the last part of this resolution, it says the superintendent's designee will identify and implement additional instructions, and this could be included but not limited to, and mental health is up under there. As a district, we are not qualified to identify or implement any mental health service, nor should that information be placed in any child's CUME or chart breaching confidentiality and HIPAA. So I want to make sure that that is cleared up and we have better clarification on what that means in this resolution or in this policy.
Okay. I'm not sure, is that a question or a clarification?
I think I need clarification.
Okay, Mr. Morosky.
So this is to Board Member Bowers. It sounds to me like you're asking for an amendment to the policy that, as it exists, which we could talk about in policy committee on Friday, and
Yes.
then bring it. Unless there's an emergency to pass it now, which no, there's not.
No, right.
Let's
Yes,
put it back in policy, if that works for you.
Yes.
Okay. So, and are we rescinding this resolution at the moment? I mean, so we want to hold off on this, presenting this resolution until it's cleared up at your next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll do that. You can put it back on at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Superintendent Mitchell, do you have a report?
Another resolution.
I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Ms.
Wishful
Bolton.
thinking.
Ms. Bolton.
Thank you very much. This is coming out of finance, and we mentioned it during the presentation of the minutes as well. Suggestion made by the treasurer, and certainly in keeping with the agility piece that we're all going to be living through. A resolution authorizing the purchase of materials and services as needed for the district's 2020-2021 school reopening plan, and determining urgent necessity and exigent circumstances exist due to the COVID-19 pandemic and public health crisis. I submit and hope for adoption.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Okay, Superintendent, your report?
I do not have a report other than the written one.
Okay. All right. Do members have questions or comments about the report as submitted? Okay, I need a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Discussion. Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Okay, I have a motion to approve the revised report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Oh, thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer? Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Thank you. Inquiries and updates. I believe Ms. Bolton, you had one, and then followed by Mr. Lindy.
Yes, I'm going to actually shorten this since it's late and we do need some actual board discussion about this, but the update is about the property tax work group that has now completed its work and has sent motions to City Council. And I want to make sure that the board members receive all those motions and are able to participate. The school district was represented, and I do want to report back what I was suggesting and agreeing with, but the work of the committee basically has been completed on two areas, and you will all have the motions that have gone to City Council in your packet this week. There's also been some court action by other members, non-members of the property work group that was formed by Vice Mayor Smitherman and Carol Gibbs. And the one area for us to contemplate where I think I know that I voted in a way that the treasurer didn't necessarily want me to vote is a very interesting proposal by the group suggesting that there be some effort made to encourage and incentivize the development of 4 families that exist throughout this city. Made a strong effort to know that that could cost us some revenue down the way, but also the cap, at least by the committee, to say only 4 families, not 10 or 12 units, but the 4 families when you do an inventory of the kinds of buildings that are available citywide. I took a chance and voted to represent us in a way that at least required additional discussion and possible action. So everyone will get the motions that went to council, get an update regarding the court issue that was filed by other members of council, as well as understand where we were on all of those. But be thinking about the 4 family possibility.
Okay. I would suggest that maybe at some point in next upcoming agendas that you add that to board matters so that we
Yes.
can get the full scope of it.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. I just have two things. One, I wanted to, while we're here, acknowledge the passing of John Lewis last week. I had the chance to hear him speak at a Teach for America event back in 2005. And what I've been reflecting on in the context of CPS, just is that he's, to me, is such a powerful, powerful example of somebody who never, ever gave up, and someone who challenged and inspired those around them to fight for a better version of this country. And I do think that here at CPS, I hope that we too can fight for a better version of our city's public education system, and that's something that as individuals and as a group, people can commit to never giving up on. And I wanted to just acknowledge that because I think that's a big deal in our country in the last week. And then second, this was just, as we head back to school, I do think whether it's virtual or in person, it's going to be critical that teachers and school leaders play a leadership role in helping kids discuss and make meaning of what's been happening around the country this summer in terms of protests for racial justice. And I wanted to hear, it may be that this should be an upcoming meeting, but I did want to hear a little bit about how the administration is thinking about that as we head back to school. We do have a meeting next week.
I believe so.
Would that be something that we should talk about then or now?
If you'd like to put it on the agenda, we can do that. Okay.
Yeah, at some point I would. I'm agnostic about when we do it. I know it's late tonight and I want to be thoughtful about that. But if we could do it next time, then I think that'd be great. And then I think related to that, I think I had asked some weeks ago about some reflections on the pros and cons of our current approach to school resource officers. And I wanted to circle back to see where that was. I'm also happy to do that next time.
Okay. Thank you. Any other inquiries and updates? All right. Okay, Ms. Bolton first.
Just there was some confusion, at least when I was receiving some emails or texts. There was some confusion, continue to be some confusion about the high school schedule, where the bells were divided and there was the 6. The questions I was getting from folks, and it's just an inquiry you might want to try to clear up or figure out. We don't need to do it tonight, but it almost looked like that schedule was more about if we are in blended than in whatever we're in, fully remote, fully distance. And that, I think, confused people as to, will the Walnut Hills people be doing Walnut Hills stuff? Will the Aiken people be doing or that? So that did confuse and maybe needs to be clarified. It was sound and good, but I think it was about not what we're doing, because doing this 5-day distance is actually going to provide even more instruction than our blended could, quite possibly. So maybe a little bit clarification on that. Just an inquiry. Thank you.
Okay. Any other assignments, Mr. Morosky?
Just to Ms. Davis, if she's watching, or Mr. Hoying, or whoever, that we have the identification of students at risk for not graduating on our agenda. So assignment to policy committee to tackle that again on Friday, so Ms. Bowers can get her amendments.
Okay. Mr. Messer?
I know this one's probably already, or no, I shouldn't say probably. I'm positive it's on the superintendent's list, but just put an exclamation point of really tailoring a message to our pre-K parents. Because I think they just, how does funding work? I have to pay, how's that work? And I just think really giving a clear, concise message, not just to the students and the whole pre-K program. I think it could really use as one of them. I'm curious about some of those things myself, and I just think that has to be called out very specifically.
Okay, thanks. And then one last thing, I don't know.
Carolyn.
Oh. Okay, go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
I just want to make a point and reiterate the importance of, there was a lot of information provided tonight. on top of I'm probably exhausted. But as a parent who is listening to all of this, I can't imagine how they're processing all of the things that were said tonight with regards to the remote learning, the expectations of, following the schedules and all these things. I just think it's important for our district leadership to communicate very well with our building administration, making sure that that communication is going well with our teachers, in addition to our students and our families. There was a presenter tonight who explained that there are some breakdowns and gaps in our communication with a lot of our parents. That is true. And I know that we have been working on as a district with getting adequate information, adequate phone numbers, adequate emails. We've been doing that. But there is going to be a big gap with the distance learning. And I just want us to really step back and think about how to engage those families, that we still have those gaps, even though we have all the devices, we have connectivity. There is still a breakdown in communication from district leadership to building leadership to teachers and even to our students and our families. So I really want to push us kind of narrowing that gap with our communication, because this was a lot of information and in a short time to turn it around, and understanding even the timelines and the flags and the progress monitoring. It was just a lot of information for any parent that may be savvy enough on the computer, may be savvy enough to understand, but not all of our parents are really able to process all the information that was distributed tonight. So I just want to challenge us as a group to make sure that our communication is well. And that's just a point I just wanted to make regarding all of the stuff that was talked about tonight.
Ms. Bowers, I just want to say, I think everybody agrees. It was a lot of information provided tonight, not only by staff, but also by board members in our discussion. I think, though, I feel pretty confident that the town halls are going to be huge, because especially if they are geared toward parents, that parents can ask those questions that I think you are trying to address. So I'm just saying, I think we agree with you, but I also think that the opportunities will come for them to really get more specific with what they really want to know. Okay, Ms. Bolton.
Just an assignment, and I think this might be good from a standpoint of the parent academy regarding how to use technology, or some of the things that people were suggesting. It might be good to house that somehow in maybe the digital academy, rather than have that kind of lesson be from each building. If you get my drift, because who knows what will be happening from each building, that there could be a place where, okay, you want to learn how to use these things, that go here, and everybody's going to the same place. Because that's part of the breakdown, is that things get different from building to building. So I would just maybe an assignment to investigate whether or not that parent learning time could be housed in one place. I think that would be helpful. And I do think the word orientation did get a little play, even among the people that were phoning in, and maybe making that a week. People seem, the other piece, as early as you can have the parent town hall, the better, because people are making decisions.
I really think, guys, let's not micromanage, and I don't want that to sound negative. We got to give it a chance. I mean, we got the town halls coming up. I heard tonight about the handbooks. All of that's going to be distributed. And I just don't want us to just start piling other stuff and other assignments on top of what we already have to do. But anyway, that's just my commentary. But the last thing is, and this is a question more, because I don't know if it's an assignment yet, but for Ms. Bolton and Mr. Messer, we're being asked to submit our year 2020-2021 board calendar. And I know earlier we had assigned that to the two of you. Was that done?
Yeah, and I think we presented to an extent what you all told us that you wanted to continue, the 4 o'clocks, the 6:30s, and what have you.
Okay, so the assignment is if we can get that final and get it to the board for approval, they're waiting on it. So we need to probably do that at the if we can, by the next meeting.
I think there's a copy of it that the board has, and you're really speaking here, and Mr. Messer drew my attention to it earlier today. We're really talking about the board meeting schedule.
The board meeting schedule, correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, and if one of you could make sure that our staff is aware of it so we can get it taken care of.
Yes.
Okay. Any other assignments? Okay, having no other business before us, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.